You are listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network.
Explore the universe with Spaceboy and Surlana.
32 minutes, 21 seconds. 5-second tone followed by a 1-second pause.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe.
Okay, gang, let's go.
From the space city called Houston, Texas, welcome to Spaceboy Universe, featuring Spaceboy and the lovely Surlana. So strap in and prepare for launch sequence.
Greetings and salutations. I am Spaceboy.
And I'm Surlana.
And this is Spaceboy Universe. It is February 11, 2016, and this is show number 123. And tonight's topic is the moon, and we have special guest Preston Dennett will be joining us a little bit later. As always, follow us on Twitter. That's at the SB Universe. Follow Surlana at Surlana. Follow me, Spaceboy, at Spaceboy Music. And, of course, follow the network, and that's important. That's the SBU Network, the SBU Network. So remember, if you want to tweet those hashtags at hashtag SB Universe and hashtag Space Cadets. Want to hang out with said Space Cadets? You can do so by going to the SBUnetwork.com and click on the dancing chat bubble in our player that's on that fabulous page that Surlana has created, and that'll get you in with all the cool kids. In addition to Twitter, you can find the universe on Facebook, Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube. Just look for Spaceboy Universe. Speaking of YouTube, you can find more than the Spaceboy Universe of archive of shows. There is video content from Spaceboy Music, video interviews, 2-Bit Gamers, and so much more. Can't catch the show live? No problemo. Take the SBU on the go with you via Spreaker, SoundCloud, iTunes, because boy, do we love to broadcast. And on that magical note, let me bring in my fabulous, lovely co-host, Surlana. How are you, Surlana?
Oh, yeah, it sounds like a kiss-up if I ever heard one.
Well, considering I'm such a monster and a diva, it's important to, show
at least give the illusion that you're not.
Give my fluffy side every once in a while, so, Mm-hmm. But other than that, so how are you?
I'm better than I was.
Well, it's good. Your face doesn't look like, and when I take it with a grain of salt, you don't seem tense.
No, I am officially back on my medication, so...
And I'm happy that you are on the road to wellness. So where do we begin? I guess we should start by do our first week 5 now.
Yes, of course.
We had a chance to talk to the wonderful people with Blogglefish. Am I saying
Blarglefish.
Blarglefish. I don't know why I'm just tongue-tied.
Nothing to do with blogs.
Barglefish.
Just stop saying it.
Okay, well, why don't I just go ahead and roll that
That'll be good.
Fabulous footage.
Right out of the fog, right out of the mist, rise the robots, they do exist.
Founded in 1989 and based in Manchester, New Hampshire, FIRST is a 501 not-for-profit public charity designed to inspire young people's interest in participating in science and technology and motivate them to pursue education and career opportunities in the STEM field. Join Spaceboy Universe as we cover the 2017 FIRST Robotics Competition.
This is week 5 of the competition for the First in Texas Robotics Championship. So you posted on Twitter today a short video of some of the progress. So can you tell us what was going on in that video and why you were so excited?
It's a part of the robot that we've been working on, and we've been putting a lot of hard work on it, and all that hard work has been paying off.
When I saw the video, the machine looks really solid. Is there some kind of back part that's going to be capturing those balls as they're sucked up?
Yes.
The hopper, because the one we built is just a prototype, so we're still getting it ready to do the real thing. And it holds about 30 balls.
Yeah, we've got a fast drivetrain on it as well. A part of the video that I edited to keep it short enough for tweeting talks right at the very last of the unedited version, talks about us shifting gears. So our drivetrain is very fast. And I think we actually, in that video, we were on our slower of the 2-speed. But the drivetrain is fast and capable of going faster than you see there. And then the ball intake is seems to be pretty effective as well. It's actually still a little rough and not quite refined, but it's showing some good promise. The function of it is close to final as far as ball pickups, but we're likely to change a lot of material there. We'll probably make a lot of what you saw as clear plastic. We use Lexan, but we'll probably change some of that to aluminum here in the next week and a half. But the function there for ball pickup is probably very similar to what we'll see at the competition.
Cool.
Well, so is that just one piece of what you have to do, that particular function? Because it seems like is going to be more during the competition, or maybe I have that wrong?
Yes, so there's basically two parts to this game. Well, 3. I forgot one. Balls, gears, and trying to climb up. We've been trying to put all 3 on the robot, and we kind of already made one. Mm-hmm. We just need to make the other 2. But the gear intake, we've been working on it, and we hope to get that up and running today.
We've been working on my robot making the new drivetrain.
With it being week 5 and you're going into your 6th week, I mean, how much would you say is left to do as competition closes in?
Well, we need to bag and tag. Bag and tag is the final date that we can work on the robot and keep it and unbag it till we get to competition. That date is going to be February 21st, so it's getting kind of close.
So, in other words, you've got this next week coming up for last day of actually working, and it seems like right after this next Saturday, it sounds like bag and tag time to get the robot prepared for a competition.
Well, we've been making 2 robots, one to bag and tag, and then we've been making another one so that after we bag and tag, we can practice with that and drive around with it, make any modifications that are needed.
Yeah, that's kind of been a new trend in the last, 5 or 6 years. Years prior to that, some of the elite teams were doing it, but in the last 5 or 6 years, most teams are now building 2 robots. One that grows up to be the competition robot and one that stays in the shop as a practice robot. The goal always with that is to make those 2 as close as possible. So what you practice with back at your shop is very indicative of how your competition robot will perform. Of course, that doubles the job, right? But that's the goal, is to give you something to work on after bag and tag.
Well, this brings up a question. I don't know if we've, brought it up before, but these practice robots, if your main primary robot goes down, are you allowed to use these practice robots in any way in the competition?
No, we can't. We could get. We're allowed to get 30 pounds of parts to replace them if the competition robot gets messed up with something, but you can't switch it.
So with looking ahead in the future, what are we looking at after the week 6? Where will y'all be at?
On March 15th through 18th, we're going to be at Lone Star Central, and that's going to be our first game. And then our second one, it's going to be March 30th through April the 2nd, and that's going to be Lone Star North in Houston as well. We also might go to Alamo, and if we go to Alamo, that's going to be the 5th through 8th. And if we hopefully win one of them, we might be in the champs in Houston in April 19th to 22nd.
So you basically have to win so many to be in the Houston competition?
Yeah, there's several ways to qualify for the championship, and that system has remained more or less unchanged over the last several years. Certainly winning the tournament outright gets you into the championship. There's a handful of off-field awards, such as the Chairman's Award, Rookie All-Star, which we're no longer a rookie, so we're not eligible for that. But there's a few off-field awards that qualify a team for the championship as well. But of course, the one that everyone's really hoping to do is win the tournament outright and then get qualified that way.
Definitely want to keep updated on your first competition. So hopefully maybe we could even be there if it's not too far away and maybe do some coverage of that as well.
Yeah, we've talked about that a bit offline in the past, and I guess I need to do my part to get some of those gears spinning to see if we can make that happen. It's the neat experience for not only you, but also for your listeners to be able to kind of tune into this live and see how this works. They will all be webcast with video and such, but to having your audience plugged in with audio would be kind of neat too.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jim, once again, we appreciate you taking the time out with your teammates. But as always, I like to save this last part for media and tell us where can they find you and all that good stuff. So remind our audience, Jim, of all the 411s.
I'll leave that up to the students. Here you go, guys.
The Twitter and the Instagram are both at SoFit5 Largofish.
And then there's also Physometry at Physometry. And we also did a Kickstarter, which turned out good. We got 1938, and we're going to profit a lot from that, which is going to help us do better with our robots.
Yeah, we were happy to get fully funded on Kickstarter and got overfunded. In fact, we had a target of $1,500 and ended up at just under $2,000. So that'll go a long way toward paying some of our expenses. Thank you for all the backers for that.
That's indeed, yes, exciting.
That's great.
Indeed. And like we always I like to end, I always throw a plug in for any other team in the world, any of your audience members out there listening and are curious about this. Go find a team near you. You can go to firstinspires.org or thebluealliance.org and search for a team near you. No matter where you are in the world, there's a team somewhere not too far away. Find a team and plug into them and help them with your time or help them with your dollar.
Well, Jim, appreciate you coming on this week, and we look forward to next week's installment. We look forward to talking to you then.
Go Largofish!
Yay!
Indeed. Have a great week.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thanks.
Well, there you go, Surlana. Another exciting week there on the old broadcast for First.
Yeah, hopefully we'll go see them compete.
That would be nice. I think Jim has got to look into that. And
I think that'll be over in our area.
Yeah, so convenience. We won't have to fly to California or to...
I would ever do that anyway.
To the East Coast or...
Yeah, that's not happening for anybody.
Can you imagine us doing a live broadcast now on either coast or...
And,
we've done a remote thing.
Somebody would have to pay an amazing amount of money to get me to do it.
It would be really
Take
great.
A lot of therapy and drugs.
What would be really good is that if we could have done, I think it's too late, but kind of got together with Reverend John Polk and did the Dallas thing up there with the, Alien Con or whatever it's called?
It's in May, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in May. So that would have been cool because we could have done it as the network. And just kind of rotate in and out and just get guests and stuff.
Why can't that just happen down here?
Well,
we're bigger than Dallas, aren't we?
Well, no, I think Dallas is bigger than Houston. Houston in general is kind of just spread thin across a great area because when you talk about from Katy to all the way to Galveston, it's just even up to Baytown. So there's just a lot of area to cover. That you have in the Houston area, where Dallas is really one big
compact
chunk, and then it butts right up against Fort Worth.
That's probably why I'm not a big fan of it.
So, what you got on your list?
Okay, well, you talked about this earlier, I think, with me some part of the day that I don't know. I'm a little suspect. This Guardians of the Galaxy 2 has scored a rare 100% in screen tests, but I think the implication is that they were using an audience of friends and family, so they weren't going to pan it. They said they wait for professional critical reviews. So I'm thinking, why do we have to wait for a professional critic's review? Go see it. If you liked it, you liked it. What do you care what some professional thinks?
The little previews that we've seen thus far, and I think I saw that... they've released the mixtape 2, I guess is on Spotify.
Oh, yeah, check that out.
Yeah, and the music is pretty cool, pretty awesome, which was a big success for the first one. So I'm looking forward to Guardians of the Galaxy. Not only that, you have the upcoming adventure. It's a tongue-tied. It's a tongue-tied evening this evening, folks, and please forgive me. What is it? The Wars. I can't believe I just forgot about
them out.
The Oh my goodness! There's a death of 1,000 nerds out there that just died because I can't remember the wars with that brings.
Infinity Wars.
Thank you. I couldn't say the word. It was just right out there.
You sound like a sad old man.
I am. I'm feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, that's gonna when they tie the Avengers into the Infinity Wars with Guardians. It's gonna be probably like the mega blockbuster of all time.
Yes, I know I'm getting old when I had to get the hedge clippers out to take the hair out of my ears so that it didn't look like a part of my toupee or something like that.
Speaking of Spotify, Prince's entire Warner Brothers catalog is coming to Spotify tomorrow.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That'll be great. What? I'm going to go on a limb here. I think I already kind of know. What's your favorite Prince song? Or do you have a couple there? I know you have a couple.
Little Red Corvette.
Little Red Corvette?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing else?
Oh, Delirious.
Well, the Purple Rain album is probably the best, I think. One of the best.
Purple Rain and When Doves Cry.
Uh-huh.
That guitar solo in Doves Cry.
Yeah. And then it...
Yeah.
Like they got a goat or something, and Prince was squeezing him and made that goat sound.
Sure.
Anyway, so
here's something I thought you'd like.
Okay.
Netflix is going to have a animated Castlevania series.
Yes, I saw that. And was it saying something in that article that it might be a little bit more adult as far as the violence is concerned? Maybe
see.
not rated G, but kind of...
Hang on, you made me scroll down to stop something.
Sorry.
Let's see, just said 30-minute episode, season 1, part 1, scheduled, available sometime this year. Will follow the last surviving member of the disgraced Belmont clan trying to save Eastern Europe from extinction at the hand of Vlad Dracula Tepe himself. See, I never played Castlevania.
It's a great game. The first one has great music to it. I think it was a big hit back in the 80s when it first came out, but they've had several versions of it since then.
This is super violent Castlevania. It's dark, satirical, and after a decade of propaganda, will flip the vampire subgenre on its head. So it's got something to do with vampires, huh?
Well, yeah, it's definitely vampires.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Really quick, I'll say... this is really fascinating. This is on avclub.com. It says, get involved, Internet. Find out what would have happened on Deep Space Nine Season 8. So the showrunner, Ira Steven Behr, has launched a fundraising campaign to shoot What We Left Behind, a documentary about the changing legacy of Deep Space Nine. And Adam Nimoy's already signed on to direct it. And it's going to have interviews with the cast members minus Avery Brooks, which is bizarre because he was the main character.
I wonder why he's not joining in on that.
He's already probably floating in the atmosphere. Anyway, it's very exciting.
Well, he does come across a little bit off the deep end,
Yeah, he said you'll be reunited with the DS9 writers, some of the main ones, and they are going to kind of like loosely sketch out what would have been Season 8's arc, because in 7, Cisco, the finale... I don't think I'm spoiling it after how many years it's been off air.
Right.
The series finale, Cisco goes to be with the prophets, the wormhole aliens.
Yes.
And he's not dead, but nobody knows what he's doing in there. So,
right.
But they do have books that go on after it.
They kind of continue from that point, but.
And the last thing I want to tell you is, Tom DeLonge is right.
Mm-hmm.
His name keeps cropping up now with Disclosure and
right.
Conspiracy. Well, he was in Blink 182, and he has another band out. So it says Tom DeLonge is finally putting out that book about UFOs. But listen to this. He has announced that his first book is a 3-part series of nonfiction books co-authored by occult historian Peter Levenda. Now, I know you've heard his name around.
Yes.
So... Secret Machines Gods will be released March 7th, and will be an installment series followed by Secret Machines Man and Secret Machines War, which he's previously used for his fiction books. So this is going to be the result of an input of scientists, engineers, intelligence officers, and military officials, and transcends the speculation of journalists, historians, and others whose conclusions are often either misinformed or only tease around the edges. He's going to, let's see. Okay, this is, but the press release calls this sort of a confirmed statement by scientists, military officials, and Tom DeLonge's brain. So that's kind of strange. I don't know what his official role is in all this, I don't know if he's part of some government.
What, a disinformation?
Yeah,
agent?
to try to, get the young kids on board of not caring about things or caring about things. I don't know. I can't make out why he's out. Why he's even out there, why he's into this stuff.
Well, I mean, it's a subject matter that he finds interesting. I mean, it just so happens that he's been really pushed into the limelight on this subject matter is because of all those emails that were flooded out to the public. Speaking of emails, we're going to be talking about the moon tonight. It's a fake.
Speaking of Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, I just had to tie that Deep Space Nine thing in there. Speaking of which, reminds me of another thing. We need to get Jim and Jody Bray on the show again and chit-chat about Star Trek, and they've got their new project is starting up.
I will tell our non-existent intern to get on that.
Yes, so I know that Scott reached out to me the other day, and we're going to get them back on at sometime soon. But going back to Deep Space Nine, it's a fake. The moon, about the disclosure of how we didn't go to the moon via the Apollo missions, but tonight is going to be a good night as far as we got Preston coming on a little bit. We'll pick his brain on that. But speaking of history, which is part of our 6 things that we talk about, this day in history, Nelson Mandela was released from prison. The American Revolution, 1776, Georgia's governor escapes imprisonment. 1937, GM signs the first auto workers contract. Civil War, 1861, Lincoln leaves Springfield. Hollywood, here's a good one. In 2008, Tolkien heirs file Lord of the Rings lawsuit. They came out and were not happy because I guess they weren't getting enough big enough piece of the pie. And if I keep stuttering, you need to whack me with a stick.
I was wondering, you okay? Are you getting enough water? I mean,
well, I got a whole jug of water over here practically, and we put the refrigerator in now in the studio, so it has water there.
Yeah, we've got a mini fridge in this room. It's like we've hit the big time.
Yeah, we're like big time now. So I don't know. I guess maybe my brain is not firing on all cylinders. Maybe I didn't take I should have maybe taken a nap today or something. But I'm doing okay. We'll muck through this, and life is good.
And, sorry about that.
So, yeah, the cat might join in once in a while, and she'll find her little...
Go get on your suitcase.
Yes, this is live, and that is our cat, Muffin, or as I've nicknamed her, McMuffin. And so... What else here? That
Be quiet. Be quiet.
Cream, yes, a great song. That was your sister that she likes that particular song. So I apologize. I don't know. I seem a little absent-minded tonight. It's my typical Gene Hackman syndrome kicking in, and I'm tongue-tied But we'll make it through tonight. So, yeah, the Muffin there for K28.
She's reached up and patted me on the back.
So, anything else you have on your plate?
No, that was it.
Oh, that was it. A big thing that has concerned me is, in on the world stage is Fukushima, the reactor. Do you know they still really haven't gotten that thing under control?
No, they still haven't stopped the leak?
No.
Gracious.
And it guess it's becoming a big concern because it's going to affect really pretty much the northern hemisphere if they don't get somebody in there and put a bottle into this genie keep the genie in the bottle, or it could be too late that the Pandora's box is already open and we're doomed. So,
oh yeah, we're doomed no matter what. And it's just a matter of what gets us first.
That reminded me of the when we were talking about the eclipse of the moon and the blood moon.
Mm-hmm.
And, so red blood moon usually is a prediction factor, especially when it comes to like the Bible prophecies. And I was thinking, great, there's your blood moon, and everybody's losing their crap still here in America over the election and all that other stuff. And one can only imagine if things pan out according to whatever. All I can say is both you and I are in for the ride. Yeah, she found her little laying down spot. She's about to chill out here and just watch you do your thing. So, let's see, what else did I have? Apple, Tim Cook says augmented reality is pretty much it's coming. It's the next big thing, like the iPhone was.
Well, VR is bigger than we thought it would be.
Yeah, but augmented reality is something where you slap some glasses on, and I could look at you, and it could pull up your Facebook or tell me things about you through the augmented reality whatever device that you have. So on one end, it's kind of cool in the sense that if you're driving, it could tell you where destination spots. Think of putting your TomTom on your face and being able to navigate without actually looking at the device. It would pop up and tell you your speed and what direction you need to go, and that would be kind of cool as well. Let's see. So yeah, he's saying augmented reality is definitely something to keep an eye out for. Other things on my radar is Batman is not going to be directed by Ben Affleck. I had that particular information.
I'm laughing. It's like I'm sitting here going, "Yeah, I care so deeply."
Well, I mean,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I appreciate
Sorry
that.
about that.
I mean, at least I'm not talking about the Walking Dead or anything like that.
I don't care. I mean,
I could have brought up how Debbie Harry said that Bowie was instrumental in launching launching her career, or a group of people's career, with her included. Mm-hmm. I could have brought that up, but let's see here. I could have brought up Legend of Zelda, the new pictures that are out there of the game that's coming up on their new system. Look awesome. They're very crisp. They're very clear. But anyway, back to the Batman report. Matt Reeves is going to direct the new Batman that I guess Batfleck is in.
Batfleck?
Ben Affleck.
Oh.
Yeah, so that just kind of spent it there. And I heard the new Lego movie Batman is out, and it is pretty dang good. It's almost...
Probably better than real Batman movies.
Well, that, and probably better than the Lego movie we went to go see, where every day is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So I've heard some good things about that. I might have to go see that at some point. I'm sure you'll say that you'll have to treat me with snacks and all that good stuff to get you to go.
Oh, well, to what movie?
The Lego movie.
No, I'm not going to that.
What?
Because there'll be kids there.
When we go to the movies, we go when there's no kids. That's like 10 o'clock in the morning on Sunday.
I don't want to risk it. Just rent it.
Well, anyway, so Lego movie Batman looks pretty awesome. So let's see what else. So, okay. I've got the Zelda thing.
Good,
I've got the tech thing. I've got the French subject covered. I got history. Debbie Harry makes games, or not music, and then games with Zelda. Well, I think I've covered all my things there, Surlana.
Well, just a word here that Beb's here and says that Bob's got a really bad cold and sore throat, so sending our thoughts out for getting well soon.
Yeah, most definitely. So, yeah, we love you guys. Take care. It wouldn't be a show without you guys listening and calling in, so definitely take care. While I'm thinking of the show, I just want to do some housekeeping before we go into a commercial break and bring Preston in, is that the new SBU schedule, the network schedule, or depending on how you look at it, Spaceboy Music is now on Friday nights at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, where I pull music out of my vault, and we play it loud. So last night we got to play it loud, and we played over an hour's worth of music. So I was kind of excited about that. SBU hasn't changed. We own Saturday night. So tune in every Saturday night at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time for SBU. That's Spaceboy Universe. Now, the new thing that is also coming to the SBU network is Sunday nights, you get the best of SBU. That's right, we pull one of our best of clips from the archives of shows, and we play it up on Sunday night for you. So this Sunday night, tomorrow, at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, we have a replay of Solaris Blue Raven. So that should be a lot of fun, wouldn't you say so, while you're taking pictures over there?
Yes, of course.
Okay, good. So on that note, let's get the commercial action going so that we can get Preston in here, and you can make that call, and just making sure that you eventually make some eye contact to agree with me.
Yeah, I don't need to look at you to talk to you.
What? Anyway, so you are listening to Spaceboy Universe. We'll be right back after this.
This is author Gordon Root. You are listening to the Spaceboy Universe.
This is K28, and I'm listening to Spaceboy Universe.
Hi, y'all. This is Lori calling from Texas, and I love listening to Spaceboy Universe.
Hey, this is Dave Cruz, host of Beyond the Strange, and you're listening to Spaceboy Universe.
This is Wendy. I'm listening to Spaceboy Universe. Hey, y'all. This is Lorelai DeLille. I listen to Spaceboy Universe. Don't you? Tell your mom and them I said hi.
The epic battle begins this Friday. Direct from ringside at Laser Death Melt. It's Bot versus Bot in Galaxy's 2-ton weight championship, where your challenger, Good Bot, will face the reigning champion, Bad Bot. You're terminated. Reserve seating starting at $30. 2-drink minimum, where ladies don't get in free. This is an SBU production. You're listening to Spaceboy Universe.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network.
Explore the universe with Spaceboy and Surlana.
Ever seen an extraterrestrial? It can be hard to believe they exist unless you've seen one for yourself. What if I told you I've seen them my whole life, but have never had a witness who shared the encounter with me? Now, what if I told you I saw 4 of them, 2 with blue skin, and there are over 20 witnesses to this CE5 event? My new book, The Blue Beings, Visitation at the UFO Conference, documents actual accounts from real witnesses, many of which have gone on record to attest to this otherworldly reality. Be a part of the quantum paradigm shift that is taking place right now. Go to johnpolkmedia.com to get your copy of The Blue Beings, Visitation at the UFO Conference, on sale right now at johnpolkmedia.com. That's JOHNPOLK media.com.
Hello Space Cadets. It is announcer Savannah. I want to tell you that as a dedicated member of the SBU team, you always want to look your best. Do it in a Spaceboy Universe t-shirt. Get yours at spaceboyuniverse.com by clicking the banner on the website.
Greetings, Space Cadets! Let's see what's in the sky tonight in the Spaceboy Universe. Tonight, in the eastern sky, we have Spaceboy Universe rising above the horizon in glorious splendor. And in the west, we can see Surlanus Majoris, which is visible at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, just below the K28 belt. So keep your eyes on the sky and listen to Spaceboy Universe.
Preston Dennett began investigating UFOs and the paranormal in 1986 when he discovered that his family, friends, and co-workers were having dramatic, unexplained encounters. Since then, he has interviewed hundreds of witnesses and investigated a wide variety of paranormal phenomenon. He is a field investigator for the Mutual UFO Network, a ghost hunter, a paranormal researcher, and the author of 18 books and more than 100 articles on UFO and the paranormal. His articles have appeared in numerous magazines including Fate, Atlantis Rising, MUFON UFO Journal, Nexus, Paranormal Magazine, UFO Magazine, Mysteries Magazine, Ufologist, and others. His writing's been translated into several different languages. He's appeared on numerous radio and television programs, and his research has been presented in the LA Times, the LA Daily News, Dallas Morning News, and other newspapers. He's taught classes on paranormal subjects, and he lectures across the United States. Please welcome back to the show, Preston Dennett.
Hello, Preston.
Hello. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me back on the show.
Well, like I was saying right before the show, or during the show, and of course during the break, is that we were excited to, we had such a good time with you last time. And then as we were planning, with these shows, you plan them out, you map out, hey, we're going to want to talk about this, we're going to talk about this. The moon came up, and I thought, well, what a perfect subject matter to bring back Preston and get his thoughts and talk to him. And so we are so ecstatic that you agreed to come back. So welcome back, and we look forward to chatting with you tonight.
Oh, I've got some stuff I want to share for sure.
Well, good. Did you want to go ahead and start it off with what you have to share? I know that both Surlana and I have done some, research and over the moon and stuff, ranging from talking about the eclipse that happened to even the leaked emails saying that they were going to be released about that we never went to the moon. But it's always good to get your point of view started so we can kind of figure out what direction we're going.
Right. Well, for me it started, I think I was like most people. I thought the moon was a dead world. Not much up there. I didn't really think a whole lot about it. Yeah, we went to the moon. I'd heard about the controversies that, no, we never did, but I think that there's enough evidence to say that we did, and I've always believed that. But never really thought much about it until the early 1990s. And at that time, I had gotten pretty deeply involved in UFO research, and had certainly heard about astronaut sightings and things like this. But that wasn't really my area of study. And then I met this gentleman who claimed to be a photographer for the Navy. And he started to tell me this incredible story about how he was involved with the astronauts when they got picked up. And he had this huge story to tell that I just completely blew my mind, which in a nutshell, we can get into it, was that there are aliens on the moon, UFO activity, and unusual events of all kinds. And that time I hadn't heard really anything quite like this. And so I started doing my research, and I found, okay, that there is something going on here. George Leonard, he wrote a groundbreaking book, Somebody Else is on the Moon, and he goes into that. And then there's, of course, Fred Steckling's book, We Found Alien Bases on the Moon, which examines a lot of the NASA photographs. And from then on, this field has really been exploding. So I've been keeping an eye on it, and I've been writing a lot of stuff down, collecting a lot of stories, and boy, I think it's time now where I've got enough corroboration from what I've read and researched that I can corroborate what this initial witness told me. So that's how it began for me.
Well, that sounds pretty exciting as far as how you've led up to that point. I guess, where do we start, Surlana, I guess?
Well, I never knew to question the moon. I never knew there was anything suspicious about it until I started looking into it.
My whole life, I've looked up there, saw the phases of the moon, thought it was wonderful. And
did you think about it?
And as a child growing up from the 70s to now, going back to the 70s, I was enamored of the moon and the stories of being told of going to the moon. Mm-hmm. And so, as a kid, I never really thought of it otherwise. I think it's been more Now so that people question with boldness of whether or not things are real or fake.
And I didn't know there was a reason to question it till I started doing this research, and now that I've done it, I'm like, I'm not even going to loan the moon any money. That's how much I don't trust it. So,
I was like, really? Will the real moon please rise? Because it was like I was living in two different worlds.
It was well, what got me? Sorry.
Do
you hear the echo?
Too loud in the background.
Yeah, well, when I started doing research into this, the first thing I did was, try to see how far back that there is any evidence of, strange activity on the moon. And what I found was, there's a lot of controversy surrounding the moon itself.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know exactly where it came from.
Exactly.
Apparently, there's no mention of it in very early writings. So we're not even really sure when it came to Earth, or if it's a part of the Earth, or what's going on here. There's two theories: that it's a captured satellite.
Right.
Two official theories, we'll say. And the other is that some large asteroid or comet hit the Earth and the moon split off from it. But we're not sure, and that itself is remarkable. But what I found really interesting is, the telescope was invented in like 1608, right? By this Dutch lens grinder, by Hans Lippershey. And this was a really revolutionary invention, and it was tried to be covered up by the Dutch government, and it was actually taken over pretty much by Galileo 1 year later, and he made it famous. And almost immediately, people started seeing stuff on the moon. And the history of this is incredible. It's fascinating. And as far back as we started looking at the moon, stuff has been up there. Right. And a good example is the famous astronomer Schroeder, who you may have heard of. He's got craters on the moon named after him. And in 1788, he was observing the moon through his telescope, and he saw all these strange dome-like features that appeared to be artificially constructed. And he continued to observe, and he observed a lot of anomalies. He saw unexplained white lights in the lunar Alps. And he watched these lights for a long time, and as the sun came up, they suddenly winked out. So some really strange stuff. And this is a major astronomer, and he is not the only one. William Herschel.
Right.
He's a pioneer, huge. He discovered Uranus. He discovered the moons of Saturn and discovered binary stars. And he was also talking about lunar anomalies. And this is way back. In 1783, he saw a bunch of unusual lights on the moon. And he started observing the moon, looking for this, and saw them regularly. So this is when it all began. And boy, the history of this is incredible.
Yeah, he saw the strange lights. It was at 1787, going across the surface when it was dark. He said he spotted 3 lights in the darkness on the surface, and the brightest one being brighter than a recently discovered comet. And he believed that there were lunar cities within the craters, and he strongly believed in extraterrestrial life, which is very laughable during that time, the 18th century.
Yeah, most people were not even thinking about extraterrestrials really at all. And I think this activity on the moon started it all. And it was so regular that they had to give it a name at some point. And it's officially called Transient Lunar Phenomena, or Lunar Transient Phenomena. TLP is the acronym. Because this was occurring so often and so regularly that they had to come up with an explanation. And at first they said, okay, the moon's obviously seismic. Mm-hmm. But problem was this explanation didn't fit the evidence. Some of these lights were appearing in patterns. There was a huge incident in which a white cross, appeared in a crater. Others where rows of lights would appear. Sometimes they'd be white, sometimes they'd be red. And just goes on, seen from all different observatories. It got really common to the point where the Royal Astronomical Astronomy asked people to turn in their own reports. They received over like 2,000 reports and said, okay, that's enough. This is in 1879. They received 2,000 reports and said, okay, stop sending them. There is too much of this stuff. So yeah, TLP is an official scientific thing. The scientists all know about it, the lunar scientists. They accept it, but they don't know what it is, and they don't talk about it. There's like no real explanation for it.
So I was going to ask, so when has there been a point where you had these lights? I mean, are we still seeing lights up there like that, or was there a point a point in history where that kind of stopped, and the moon has seemed, I hate to say it, seemed dead?
Nope, it's not. If you go through the history of this, there's reports in the 1890s, 1899 there's a report in 1910, 1912, 1917, 1922. It goes on right up to the 50s and 60s and 70s, 80s, right up to the present day. And some of these have been aired on TV shows like Sightings and Encounters. And there's some really amazing footage that's already out there right now. So this stuff, is still occurring. And here's something that I've always wondered about. We know that there's a lot of controversy, at least, about what's going on the moon. And yet, we have never trained the Hubble telescope on the moon, which would quickly, resolve any conflicts.
Right.
Whether or not there's, supposed structures up there. Because the anomalies fall into different kind of categories. There's lights, the TLP, is kind of a broad generalization for 3 different things. Unexplained lights. And then there's also unexplained, I guess you would call it landscaping or movements, where domes appear and what looks like canals and bridges and things like this. And then there's just flat out UFOs. So, we haven't even started talking about what the astronauts saw or what, the witness I've talked to, what he saw. But the point is, going back through history to the first time we started looking at the moon to the present day, people have been seeing lights. They've been seeing these domes. They've been seeing these bridges. The landscape is being mined or moved in some way. It's really surprising to me that more people aren't talking about this.
Well, that's what I didn't even, like I said, I never thought to question it till I started digging into it for this, prepare for the show. And one of the first things I came across when I started to do the research was Isaac Asimov, a quote. He said, "What in the blazes is our moon doing way out there? It's too far out to be a true satellite of Earth. It's too big to have been captured by the Earth," meaning its gravity. Mm-hmm. "The chances of such a capture having been affected and the moon having then taken up a nearly circular orbit about the Earth are too small to make such an eventuality credible. But then if the moon is neither a true satellite of the Earth nor a captured one, what is it?" So I got to look into this, and so because the moon is just so perfect, it's the right size to keep our tides going, keep our Earth stabilized. But how did it get there?
Currents in the ocean. Everything is... It's kind of a symbiotic relationship with us and the moon. So
the first suspicion is, how did it get there? And as you said, there was this idea that, Charles Darwin's son, George Darwin, said it was because of fission. And so they held on to that one for a while. Then the capture theory. And then, there's the, no, it was formed because something smacked into us. And then there's another theory that says, no, 2 things smacked into the Earth and created the moon. But then you started talking about the moon's density and its crust and its mantle, and how when it gets impacted, it doesn't quite react the way we would think it would. Right.
Yeah, during the Apollo missions, we did seismic experiments on it, and it rang like a bell in a way that was very unexpected. And they did not know how to interpret it. Officially, that they still don't quite know what to make of it. But this has led to the main theory that there's, a hollow aspect to the moon. and that maybe it's not even what it appears to be at all. Maybe it's a craft.
Right.
Now,
when they say rang like a bell, do they mean, is it not necessarily a sound, but it's like a reverberation they captured?
Exactly. I mean, so when you like strike it with, say, an explosion or a bomb or an object, it reverberates. There's a seismic wave you can measure, and it kept on going, and it kept echoing and echoing, the way a hollow object would. Mm-hmm. And what's really interesting about the moon is we had an awful hard time getting there. There was the whole space race between us and Russia, and supposedly that's why we were in such a rush to get there, was to beat the Russians. But really what was going on is we both knew that there was stuff going on up there, and we were really eager to get there because there were active alien bases. I mean, they could see this stuff going on. This is the theory, is that there were extraterrestrials up there, and that was why we really went to the moon. And what's amazing is it took us, I mean, it was almost a disaster from day one. We had a terrible time doing a flyby to the moon, a terrible time trying to fly around it, doing the first soft landing, the first crash landing. And in fact, the Russians beat us in every single way, pretty much, up until the very end, when supposedly, this is the official story, that we made the first human landing on the moon. Now, this has been contradicted, actually, by outside sources and by the guy I talked to. He said actually the Russians got there first, before we did, and did not publicize it because of what they found.
They're trying to keep it to themselves.
I was getting ready to say they made it, and I guess they were freaked out by what they saw and decided not to, disclose anything, huh?
Right. But the original point I was wanting to make is that the gravity of the moon was tricky, and there seems to be something weird about it that we don't quite understand. The midpoint of where the moon's gravity is stronger than the Earth was completely miscalculated. There's still some major questions about that. And as far as the Apollo missions, and the Gemini missions, there were questions from day one. Absolutely.
What is your opinion on those early photos we got where they had all the smudges and smears on the photos? Were those deliberate on NASA's part, or was that just the technology of the day? Excuse me.
Yeah, no, I think the NASA photos represent some of the strongest, but certainly not the only evidence we have of UFOs on the moon. And yes, they've been caught red-handed altering them. And there's multiple sources to substantiate this. And it started coming out pretty much right away. A lot of these NASA photos weren't being examined. And some of the first people to do it was George Leonard in his book, Somebody Else is on the Moon. And if you look at these photos, they are astounding. There is some very famous photos of what shows landing, or I guess you would call tracks, kind of like stitching in the soil. And you can actually see these large objects at the very end of where this track, this pathway, has been carved into the lunar surface. And the NASA's explanation is these were boulders that had been rolling around the surface, which is a ridiculous explanation because the stitching pattern, just like you'd see on a bulldozer, is very plain. And some of these things turn, they're going up and down hills, up the side of a crater. And if you look at them, they look like machines. They've got to be extremely massive to be as visible as they are. But he's the first guy who really, broke the story that something is going on.
Well, that sounds pretty out there. I mean, not really out there when you've seen pictures, and we've seen quite a few pictures that mostly recently that describe machines like that and other objects on the moon. So we're kind of close to the top of the hour, Preston. So let's take a quick musical interlude, and when we come back, we will talk more about the moon and our wonderful guest, Preston Dennett. So don't go anywhere.
Okay, we're back. Preston, I did ask you in the break. My friend Dennis asked if you had seen the documentary UFOs and Astronauts, UFOs on the Moon.
Yeah, it's one of several documentaries that have been put out about this subject. Some have different slants, but yeah, there's definitely some interesting work being put out, and that it was a pretty good show, actually.
And you said you wanted to talk about the Gemini and Apollo missions before you get to your big news.
Right. I mean, moving past some of the NASA photos. Remember, there was also that controversy with Gary McKinnon.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
That was juicy.
Where he actually hacked into NASA and saw this kind of stuff. Stephen Greer talked to a witness who also walked into a room where they were brushing out UFOs out of NASA photos. And Fred Steckling's book shows all kinds of structures. And there's Richard Hoagland with the Shard.
Oh, yes.
Which I'm sure you've heard about. So there's something going on up there as far as structures, which is, what this original witness that I had interviewed several years ago was talking about. But moving to the Gemini and Apollo missions, this is, of course, very important, because what's incredible is from the very first mission on to the very last one, pretty much, these guys were having problems with UFOs. Even before, when Sputnik was launched, there's reports of these mystery satellites going around the Earth that weren't either of ours. So we don't know what that was. And if you look into the history of rocketry, going back to 1947, which at White Sands mostly is where we did a lot of our stuff. From the very beginning, when we would launch missiles or rockets of any kind, they would be followed by UFOs. I wrote all about this in my book, UFOs over New Mexico. And I can tell you, even the commander of the White Sands Air Force Base released a statement talking about how he had himself seen this stuff. White Sands was literally besieged by UFOs for that entire decade as they did all this initial rocket testing, which, also continued on in other places like Edwards Air Force Base and China Lake. There was an incident over Seal Beach with the Saturn rocket where 40 scientists actually observed this huge UFO just hovering right overhead. So they've been keeping very close on the whole space race from the beginning, and close to a degree that is astonishing, because I found 2 cases where people were launching toy rockets, just little tiny rockets, and this provoked a UFO sighting. There was a case of amazing, right? In upstate New York, a father with his kids.
Like a little model rocket you'd put together.
Right. Not a big deal, you wouldn't think. But this is how close the ETs are watching us doing the space race. So when we're launching the Gemini and Apollo missions, it should come as no surprise to find that pretty much all of them were followed by UFOs. And many of them have well-verified UFO sightings that took place with them that are verified by multiple witnesses. There's cases involving photos in a Gemini mission, which one of the astronauts, Jack McDivitt, he took the photos. And it's a huge controversy about them, because when he got them back, they weren't all the same photos. Some were missing, the best ones, of this mystery satellite that he had photographed, which apparently wasn't ours. They couldn't identify it. So there's a lot of insiders saying this. Maurice Chatelain, he worked directly with the Gemini and Apollo missions. He said flat out, each of these missions was followed to and from the moon, particularly the Apollo missions, by UFOs. And he's not the only guy who said this. Chris Kraft, he's another NASA insider who said the same thing. Otto Binder, there's a whole bunch of them.
So, I'm sorry, I was reading for questions. Apparently, I guess K28 had a question here. Has the guest seen the images of the 6 Apollo landing sites that have shadows cast by the landed spacecraft?
Well, I'm not exactly entirely certain which photos they're talking about here. There's been a lot of these photos examined to see if they're fake, because there's this whole theory that we never did go to the moon.
Right.
Which is, I think if you look at the evidence, I think the evidence is strong enough to say that we did go. But there are some questions that it's very curious, because we're up there and we're taking footage of everything. And yet the footage that came back, a lot of it appears to be missing. And I think what's happening is some of it was probably filmed in a Hollywood studio. Now, there's evidence to speak towards that some of these photos do seem to have some strange characteristics to them. And there's some weird activity during some of the filming. that we've seen, publicly. The James Bond books, of course, written by Ian Fleming.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Ian Fleming was an insider. He had sources, in this world of the cover-up, and he would put true stuff into his books. And that's kind of why they became so popular, the whole James Bond series. And one of his books, he actually talks about this, in which he shows James Bond running through a movie set in which the whole moon landing is being faked. And I think what we're looking at here is there was a lot of footage that they had to take of moon bases and things like this that they didn't want us to see. And so they had to come up with something, because they had most of the footage was of anomalous stuff. And speaking towards that again was the amount of moon rocks brought back.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look into that, it's the same problem. Most of it has never been released. It's ridiculous. And in fact, not that long ago, NASA said they actually lost the original moon footage. And I mean, how is that possible? That would be the most valuable thing in human history.
Right.
And you would lost it?
You would think that, the Smithsonian, the way they archive just about everything, and it would be such a, like the Declaration of Independence. How they keep that in this glass case, and it protects it from the elements and ultraviolet. And you would think something like the moon landing footage would be, in that same kind of care, if you will. I'm also taking a step back here, Preston. I'm reminded of Capricorn 1. Did you ever see that particular movie back in the late 70s?
Brenda Vaccaro.
Yeah, O.J. Simpson was in the movie. It talks about how they, I guess it was a moon, they were going to the Mars. It was a Mars mission, but they were faking the mission. And I find it just a fascinating movie that if anybody in our audience hasn't seen it, you should definitely go out there and see if you can find it on Amazon or whatever. But it just kind of makes you wonder if there's some kind of connection there about us going to the moon in that same aspect. And then I know also that Surlana and I have done a show on Stanley Kubrick, which is a whole bag of things there. Did you want to elaborate on that, Surlana?
Oh, just, we looked at all the so-called clues. They're supposed to be in The Shining, and a little bit of 2001, but mostly The Shining, of that he was supposedly instrumental in helping film the faked footage. But then recently, maybe last year, a tweet from Kubrick's daughter saying he was never involved in anything like that. So.
Wow.
So I mean, you got all these things, and I'm sorry to interrupt. You have all these things that are out there, that make you wonder. Okay, what if Stanley Kubrick was telling us that we didn't go to the moon, or maybe Hollywood is onto something about like they did in Capricorn 1. But then there's people like, us that, well, I don't know, I feel like we went to the moon. I think we made it to the moon. But as far as getting to the moon and how it went down, I'm sure there's a B side to the story that we haven't been told or released because of whatever might be out there.
Yeah, we weren't being told the truth from the very beginning. I mean, on April 8th, 1964, when Gemini 1 was launched, it was during the second orbit that they saw 4 typical flying saucers. And this was supposedly tracked by ground crews. And this continued in June 4th, 1965, Gemini 4, they saw a UFO. This is when McDivitt actually photographed it. And they still don't know what it was. And other Gemini missions, Gemini 7, they were carrying astronauts Frank Borman and James Lovell. And by this time, they were using the term bogey to designate a UFO.
Mm-hmm.
And this was in 1965. They saw a bogey. They reported it above and to the left of their spacecraft. And NASA says, oh, no, that's probably your burnt-out rocket booster.
Right.
And Borman's like, no, we can see the booster right here. So this went on all through the entire Gemini missions, and we haven't even gotten to the moon at that point.
Right.
So it's really an open secret, is what I'm kind of getting to the point, within NASA. Everyone within NASA knew it. And when they were going to the moon, they knew that they were going to be in for something. They fully expected it. Carl Sagan, a lot of prominent astronomers were saying, oh yeah, there might be moon people up there.
Well, Sagan said a natural satellite cannot be a hollow object, meaning that if the moon was hollow, then it's not our natural satellite, therefore it's artificial. That statement kind of struck me too.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of statements released by high-level officials that are pointing towards this, and yet they're still kind of keeping the secret. NASA was caught so many times in contradictions that reporters gave them the name "Never a Straight Answer."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard that.
So, I mean, clearly they've kind of muddled things up. I think what they've done, or the situation is that they've gotten a real hot potato. When they went to the moon, they're like, oh my gosh, this is a lot more than we realized we were in for. And this is what, my witness was saying. So, yeah, I should really get into what his story is, because, boy, oh boy, I mean...
Well, before you do, I was going to say, correct me if I'm wrong, in the Apollo missions, and I can't remember which one, one of the Apollo missions reported seeing objects following them, but then they switched over from their main channel to their medical channel, I guess, what I can recall, to report this news back to, to NASA. Do you recall that story or hearing about that?
Yeah, there's a number of stories like this. I think there was one in Apollo 8 when they were going around the moon, and they apparently saw something that said, use the word Santa Claus is real. And there's a number of cases like that. I know that was Apollo 8. And I know that Apollo 9, apparently, they saw UFOs as well. And that came from, who was it? That was McDivitt, I believe, as well. And Apollo 10 just orbited the moon, inspecting the site for Apollo 11, right? And it was while Apollo 10 was orbiting the moon, suddenly their gyro guidance control failed and caused this spinning and yawing motion. This was the official explanation. But however, later there was a researcher, Don Wilson, who said that the astronauts were actually surprised by a UFO, which they photographed as it passed their craft. And according to Maurice Chatelain, this NASA insider, Apollo 10 was followed very closely by UFOs the entire way to and from Earth. But it was Apollo 11, of course, which I'm sure people have heard the story. And this is coming from multiple sources now, though Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin have never backed down. They've always said, no, we haven't seen anything publicly. But supposedly, when we actually landed on the moon, there were UFOs right there on the other side of the crater watching the whole event, which they undoubtedly had to film.
Which reminds me at this point of another thing that Surlana and I have talked about, was it Buzz Aldrin who somebody went to his house and...
That was Linda Moulton Howe talking about how some of his friend went to Armstrong's house, and he didn't have anything referencing the fact that he was the first man on the moon. No pictures, no news clippings, no accolades, no awards, nothing, no photos. And he said because he said it was all such a lie. They told me not to say anything.
Yeah, I think there's been a number of cases where he's told other people. I've heard several of them myself, and they're all kind of third hand, but as they add up, you really start to wonder.
Well, speaking of adding up, that leads us into your big, I guess, big information to release. So tell us.
Yeah, so before I got involved in any of this moon research, this guy I interviewed, he had actually seen a UFO, and that was why I was interviewing him. But he says, I have a much better story to tell you. And he had already come from very well verified sources, people who'd spoken for his credibility, and appeared to be a great witness. And he told me how he had worked in the Army, and suddenly he's bumped up with a top secret clearance. He was just a petty photographer, he said, and his security clearance is suddenly bumped up, and he's put on one of the ships, and he finds out, lo and behold, he's on one of the ships that picks up the astronauts. And it was his job. He says there was only a couple of them, one or two of these photographers, and he was one of them. And it was his job to develop as much film as he could that the astronauts took, and to take pictures of them. And in fact, he was told to go into the capsule, as it lands, and with them in quarantine, and be basically the first person who talks to them and document the whole thing. So this was a big deal. He was just a young guy, couldn't believe he had been thrust into this kind of thing. And he said that when he met the astronauts, right after they came back, they were out of their minds. They were just babbling. They were apoplectic. They could not believe what they had seen. And they told him, he's like, well, what did you see? And they said, well, we saw alien bases. We saw alien bases that were still operational. We saw all kinds of structures, crashed UFOs. And it went on from there. And so he was pretty shocked by all that, to say the least.
Wow. Now that's kind of jives with some of the things I've read and heard, and is it Richard Hoagland that had supposedly went through all these artifacts supposedly on the moon?
In fact, I think he is one of the leaders who have talked about the artifacts of the moon, of Mars, of course. But there was, I guess, several things where he brought up a picture of a looked like a robot head, if you will, and I found it very interesting. It had like a collar band, and you could see kind of where the eyes would have been. And although the picture's blurry a little bit, you could tell that it doesn't seem natural on the moon, because you've got the gray and all the what is commonly looks like the moon. And then you contrast that with a little bit of color, so it stands out. So, yeah, and then, of course, Richard goes on to talk about glass structures. And then, of course, he teams up with Mike Barra and talks about other features that are on the moon. And it's quite a fascinating subject.
Yeah, it really is. And so he was one of the first to not only look at these photos, develop them, and talk to the guys who took the pictures. So as he's developing these pictures, he sees that the evidence of what these astronauts had told him. And he says it was the thing about the photos is it was very difficult for him. There was a lot of them, for one thing. He only got through maybe 1% of what the astronauts took. There was just a massive amount of film. And the stuff he saw was very difficult to interpret because there was not a whole lot of perspective, and he wasn't quite sure what he was looking at. But there was crashed UFOs for sure. He saw walls. He saw domed structures. He saw what appeared to be canals. And the astronauts also told him, and this is kind of one of the reasons that I kept this story quiet for so long, it's because he said that there was evidence of air on the moon and plant life, and even small creatures in some places.
Wow.
Now that kind of like, that's not what we're being told for sure.
Oh, most definitely. I think it's interesting that you talk about, I guess, creatures on the moon. I mean, we've heard kind of rumors and things going back once again to Richard Hoagland about how you have these creatures that have been spotted, and of course plant life, and there are some very compelling pictures from Mars that give the illusion that you're looking at plant life and different things, not on a grand scale, but like pictures that you can compare to Earth with like cities that have been, or ancient cities that are no longer visible. But
So we can't see these now with our telescope just to the moon?
well, I was just, Dennis had posted a thing about pointing the Hubble telescope to the moon, and he said it would be like taking a set of binoculars and looking at your carpet in your house, just straight down. Not very effective, but, it seems to me that we should have the technology to aim something at the moon and get some pretty good details.
If they're not going to let us have that info,
true.
right?
I imagine it's military-based technology, but considering what you can do with Google Maps, I'm surprised they haven't put a satellite in geosynchronous.
Sorry, yeah.
Tongue-tied.
Don't even try it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Bless your heart. And why they haven't put a satellite over the moon to really take some really good details, which probably adds to the fire that there is something they just don't want us to see there.
Yeah, I think pretty sure that there is evidence that there's stuff they don't want us to see. If you go on the internet, there's all kinds of photos, some of which are obviously faked.
It's
fake. Even some videos.
Yeah.
Astronauts walking through supposed alien bases. I don't know if it's true or not, but some of this footage is definitely intriguing. I've watched a lot of the original astronaut footage, and I'm fascinated by this story, because if this is true, this is one of the biggest cover-ups in human history. And the more one looks into it, the more and more evidence piles up. There was Larry Warren. He wrote this book, Left at Eastgate, about the whole Rendlesham Forest incident.
Right.
You may remember that, but there was a segment in his book where he talked about how he and his other officers were brought into a room and they were shown a film of the moon. And there on the moon, with incredible clear footage, showed alien bases. Flat out. So he's one of many witnesses coming forth, bit by bit. Each of these is sort of, another piece of the puzzle pointing towards this huge conspiracy that is still ongoing. I mean, the moon is real close. We have the technology to go there very easily, and yet we're not doing it officially. Mm-hmm. According to the guy I talked to, the Apollo missions didn't stop.
That's what I had heard too. We just didn't know about it.
So after 18, there were more missions?
Yeah, and he said not only that, but it was cooperative between the Russians and the Americans. And this is something that also seems to be corroborated in other sources. I mean, within NASA, there's a lot of intergovernmental sharing where we, on the surface, we're supposedly having all this friction when in fact that's just kind of a whitewash. So and behind the scenes, we're cooperating in this huge secret space race and all this stuff that's going on behind the scenes.
So would this tie into the secret space fleet that they supposedly a theory that has, or conspiracy theory, or however you want to slice it, that's out there, that we actually have a space fleet out there?
It looks like that is probably why the whole UFO cover-up is crumbling, and we're learning about all the UFO crashes and a lot of really heavy-duty stuff to hide, that sort of thing. The real truth, which has become such a hot potato that they need to release this other stuff to sort of clear the plate. I mean, so much is going on behind the scenes right now. It's incredible. There's a lot of amazing books about disclosure being released right now. And it's a very exciting time. I think the truth of what's going on behind the moon, or on the moon, is going to come out fully sooner or later. It's coming out sort of bit by bit right now. But the whole story is going to bust wide open. It has to. It's too big.
Well, I always thought as soon as China got involved in it, and Japan by going to the moon themselves, now you've got other countries that I don't know that we can tell them what to do, but they can release whatever they want. Supposedly, I don't know if it's true that China had released some shots of the far side of the moon in 2009, revealing controversial structures found there and proof of bombing on the surface. Now, that I hadn't seen that myself.
I hadn't heard about that, but I'm not surprised. I know there's still interest in going to the moon, sending probes and things like this. We did the Clementine missions, discovered that the lunar rocks are actually mostly composed of oxygen, and the surface, there does appear to be the presence of water on the moon, which is really surprising. The whole atmosphere controversy still hasn't been solved. What I find very interesting is there's this whole other side to the moons that is not being talked about, and that is contactees. Now, a contactee is someone who claims to have basically a benevolent contact with aliens. And there is a good dozen cases, including, the main guy, George Adamski, of people who claim to have been taken to the moon. And this started before we actually went to the moon and continued after. And these people are reporting that there are places on the moon where you can breathe, and it's like the high desert, and it can support life. It's not very easy, but there is plant life, there is atmosphere, and there is some limited animal life, which is so opposed to official thinking that it's really hard to talk about. People will not take you seriously if you talk about air on the moon. But look at how what lunar rocks are composed of. And this is supposedly where the atmosphere is coming from. This is what my witness told me. He said that there are very large caves and hollow places on the moon, and they're filled with air, and that there is plant life. And if you look at the photos in Fred Steckling's book, some of them, the color photos, they do show green growth. It's very hard to explain away.
What do you think that means? Is that an argument for the case that the moon is natural, or could it just mean it got terraformed?
I'm personally of the belief that it's natural, just because it's so hard for me to imagine that would be a spaceship, because it looks like moons that we see throughout our solar system. And we've only talked about the moon. I mean, there's stuff on Mars, of course, that's incredible. And a lot of anomalies. But to me, the moon looks like a natural satellite. I'm not sure if it was captured or not. I mean, certainly, I guess aliens have the possibility to move something like that. But I'm not sure that that's what we're looking at, is a giant hollow thing filled with aliens. I think probably what we're looking at is a lot of ruins. This is what my guy told me. A lot of this stuff was really old, just ancient, and broken down, and parts and bits of it were working. There was some lights and stuff, but most of it wasn't. And there was some that was. And then there's this whole aspect that there's active UFOs on the moon. And we know that that's true because the TLP phenomena is continuing. And there's some, rumors that we were warned off the moon, and this is why we haven't continued to it. But then there are other stories that we have human colonies on the moon, human bases. Mostly scientific research, doing kind of genetics and things like that, which haven't been verified. There was the whole Alternative 3 conspiracy years ago, which talked about that. That was kind of a book that came out, and movie, which talked about a secret mission to Mars and moon bases. So that's a possibility we're looking at too, that we're actually up there right now.
Well, that sounds pretty interesting, Dennis. I mean, I'm sorry. That's what happens when I do double duty on monitoring tweets. But when we come, let's go ahead and take the top of the bottom of the hour. It shows where we're at. I'm thinking top and it's the bottom. Yes. So our guest tonight is Preston Dennett. I got that one. You should give me that one, Surlana.
Sure.
And when we come back, I'll have it together and we'll talk more because I do want to circle back to about making no attempts to land at a particular place. So don't go anywhere. And we'll be right back after this musical interlude.
Okay, we're back. I can't remember where we were for a second there.
I was going to mention, I was reminded that in the movie 2010, where they go to find Discovery around orbit in Jupiter, and they're wondering what went wrong, and they took a ride with the Russians to go check out the spaceship. And at the end of that particular thing, spoilers, the monolith creates turns Jupiter into a sun.
Yeah.
And then as the final message from Discovery, it says, all these planets are yours except for Europa. Make no attempt to land there. And I don't know, I guess something Preston was talking about, and I just wanted to tie it into there. So I'm going to step away for just a second to get some water. And Surlana, it's all yours.
So what was the point you're trying to make is, are they doing the same thing with the moon? They're trying to get us off the moon because they're using it for something else?
Yeah, I think that there's a question about that. Were we warned off the moon? There was the whole Apollo 13 controversy. I mean, there's controversies with everyone, each landing on the moon. Apollo 11, of course, had the first time we officially did it. According to the guy I talked to, the Russians got there first. And there's other accounts of this now coming out, that the Russians got there and didn't want to reveal because they saw stuff that was just out of this world. So that's a possibility.
So the Russians got there first, not the Germans.
I don't know. This is what my guy said. We don't know what the truth is, but apparently the Americans were not the first. And then there was Apollo 12. Okay, we're going to go back.
Okay.
They had some weird stuff going on. While, according to James Harder, now he's a really well-known scientist and UFO researcher. There was very few scientists who were kind of looking into UFOs at the same time, and he personally studied the Apollo tapes from Apollo 11 and 12 and said that they did encounter UFOs, and he heard astronauts Conrad, Gordon, and Bean talking about how they were followed by UFOs, and that the information was kept secret to avoid a public panic. But what's interesting is there were several observatories around the world who are tracking Apollo 12, and there were 2 additional objects seen glowing as right next to the Apollo 12 craft. And observatories in Europe supposedly tracked this thing, one which was in front of Apollo 12, and one which was behind. UFOs would kind of blink on and off. And that was on the first day to the moon. And on the second day, they observed UFOs again, which they reported to Mission Control. So Apollo 12 had a whole bunch of UFO sightings, some of which they apparently photographed. And they also said that they thought they saw clouds on the moon, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
So some really interesting stuff going on with each Apollo mission. And as it goes on, of course, there was Apollo 13, which did not work out. There's a rumor that Apollo 13 was carrying nuclear weapons and that we were supposedly going to do some explosive experimentation on the moon. And that's one of the reasons that we were basically warned off. I didn't find any evidence really to speak towards that. It was just rumors as far as I could tell. But behind where there's smoke, there's fire. But Apollo 14, now they supposedly wanted to land right to where some of these weird stitching tracks had been reported. We didn't see any photos close up of those, which I wonder why. If there's all this stuff going on the moon, why aren't they investigating it?
Well, I'm looking at a supposed photo of the backside of the moon that has what looks like a structure, or it doesn't look natural. It looks like something deliberate. it's just a satellite image. I don't know how you could easily explain that away if that is real.
Yeah, and some of this came directly from the astronauts themselves. Apollo 15, astronaut Scott was doing a moonwalk, and his official radio message to Houston was, "There are tracks here going down the slope." And he described the tracks. He says, "Talk about organization, so uniform in width." And astronaut Irwin said, "That's the most organized structure I've ever seen," and described it saying they had a uniform thickness from the top of the tracks to the bottom. So, you can't deny something like this. NASA's claim that this is rolling rocks is kind of ludicrous.
Yeah, I'm looking at one of the pictures, too, of one of these supposedly rolling rocks, and I just have a hard time believing that that rock got there by itself. But let's look at the example of the rocks out in the desert.
Yeah, they finally figured out what happened there.
Do you want to explain that one?
It's something to do with, the water was, I don't know if it was like slightly freezing and then melting and it was scooting it. Mm-hmm. Something to do with, they explained it finally.
The sliding stones of Death Valley, I've been there actually. And I wrote about that and I heard about that theory. It's still weird. I have to tell you, I actually looked at some of these things. But you're right, apparently the wind howls like mad out there, and it does. And the surface of the lake can get very slick, and it leaves these tracks. But there's some questions about how some of these stones are turning, and some of them are very large. So
it's very cool, though.
Right, but it goes back to, at least here on Earth, I imagine that you've got the wind, you've got the only thing I can compare on to the moon, at least my limited thinking on that would be, I mean, sure, you might have some hot to cold moments on the moon's surface. You would not have wind. There might be some water underneath, as they were describing that they found water icing over. But I imagine these things are pretty sizable. Wouldn't you think so, Preston?
Yeah, one of the tracks that we're looking at in the NASA photos are indicating an extremely large object. And the theory is that these are giant mining machines, which is entirely possible. I mean, I did a chapter in one of my books, not from here, about UFOs in mines. And there are account after account of UFOs hovering over copper mines in Arizona, gold mines here in California, iron mines, uranium mines. There was a case in Texas involving a uranium mine. They're very interested in this kind of thing. And I think that's what's happening because there's so many reports of people seeing the landscape all moved around and big pieces of it. This is supposedly what Apollo 13 was going to do, is land right next to some of these tracks. And Apollo 13 didn't do it, but Apollo 14 did, and reportedly inspected tracks. And there was tracks that have appeared all over the place near Fra Mauro. There was some near Crater Alphonsus, Crater Theophilus, a bunch supposedly on the lunar dark side, which, by the way, just to point out, the dark side of the moon, that's a misnomer. It is exposed to light, but it's never exposed to Earth. The moon always keeps sort of the same face to Earth as it rotates around it. So you have to wonder what's going on the dark side of the moon. And supposedly this is where there's a lot of these structures that we just can't see.
That's probably on purpose because we can't see them, maybe.
Well, I think it's pretty convenient that you've got one side of the moon that we, Earth, do not get to see at all, other than if we sent a satellite into orbit or beyond that. I mean, so a lot could be taking place on the other side of the moon, and we would not even know.
And if it does, you kind of feel as a human like, okay, this is the moon's. The moon is ours. Let's say it kind of belongs. It's our satellite. It's ours. So we think about these alien creeps hanging out on our moon, tailing us and chasing us off our own. I was like, where do they get off doing that?
There's nobody owns the moon officially. I mean, this is officially owned by Earth. But I think that we're looking at a very different story because it is a very strategic location. And apparently there is a lot going on up there that they're still trying to keep secret. Apollo 16, they also encountered UFOs. I mean, every single one of these Apollo missions. Apollo 16 reportedly saw a UFO along the edge of a crater, and there was a transmission from one of the astronauts talking about how this light is flashing. They said, it's something flashing. That's all so far. Just a light going on and off by the edge of the crater. A direct quote. And Apollo 17 also, according to Maurice Chatelain, again, one of the first guys to come out about this, he said that Apollo 17, which was, supposedly the final voyage, they encountered UFOs shortly after launching from Earth, in between Earth and the moon, and at the moon. So I think what happened is they just got so heavy duty that they were like, that's it, we're not telling people anymore, we're going to do this in secret. And also the astronauts, according to the guy I talked to, were really upset because they found out that they were more just a publicity stunt. That there was a lot going on behind the scenes, and they weren't the real space race. There was people going up there. There was other space exploration going on behind the scenes.
So that makes me think that going all the way back to Kennedy's time, when it's like, oh, we'll be the first to get to the moon, was just more like a morale booster, maybe for the country, or just like our little chest beating moment. Look how great we are. When it makes me wonder what else he might have known for us to get there. But like I said, if we've been cooperating with the Russians all this time, maybe it's makes me wonder if the Cold War was all just a scam to keep us busy while they were doing stuff like this behind the scenes.
Well, see, you bring up another one.
That's pretty deep in it.
I was remembering something that Richard Hoagland had mentioned about how we had this joint cooperation with Nikita Chess. No, I can't even.
I can't help you here.
Yeah, it's Russian.
Okay.
Nikita why can
Khrushchev?
I? Yes, thank you.
Oh.
And JFK were having this secret clandestine meeting about it was originally going to send Russians and Americans to the moon. And I think Khrushchev, his son, was going to be involved in some way. So I remember something to that effect as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a cover-up. There's all sorts of stuff going on behind the scenes, and this affected the astronauts, I think, in big ways. A lot of them came back from what they happened on the moon completely transformed. Some turned to spirituality. Edgar Mitchell wrote books about this. Gordon Cooper, he's an astronaut who made some amazing revelations. He flat out said he saw UFOs while flying his jet aircraft, described it completely, and also came right out and said that when he was at Edwards Air Force Base, he was there when a UFO landed. It was filmed, and he was given the film to develop, which he did, and he observed the film and saw this UFO land right on the tarmac there, stay there for a little while, and take off. And he did what he was told. He turned this footage over to his superiors. FOIA, Freedom of Information requests to get this footage have gone unsuccessful. He never saw it again. He never saw the footage again. But what's amazing is this is a high-level astronaut who is saying that UFOs are not only real, and not only has he seen them, but they're landing at our own Air Force bases. So it's a remarkable revelation. He's kind of one of the very few who's come forth and said flat out, there's UFOs on the moon. But none of the others, they've all they've towed the party line, most of them.
Well, what about more recent things that have been seen with, we've got better equipment now to view the moon. There's supposedly our government has secretly been tracking 2 huge objects approaching Earth for 2 years. As it's January 2013, these objects disappeared all of a sudden about 200,000 miles past Mars, and now it seems one of them came back to land on the moon. And I'm looking at a supposed Google moon image of it. It's like a triangular black shape with lights down two of the angles.
Right. Depending on the moon conspiracy theorists or moon researchers, there's 2 schools of thought: that there's just old artifacts on the moon, and others is that there's active UFO activity. I'm obviously believing the latter, that stuff is going on right now because of reports like this. Absolutely. I know that on June 19th, 2012, China launched their Shenzhou 9 spacecraft. And this, at first, the launch went normally. This missile soared upwards smoothly, but about 4 minutes and 11 seconds in, at about 15,000 meters, infrared cameras that were tracking the launch captured 2 UFOs move right past the rocket. And this was televised live all across TV on China. And experts and officials declined to offer any explanation. So this is another indication of them watching us very closely in everything we do. This occurred more recently on May 15th, 2014, not that long ago at all, when the Russians launched their Proton M rocket. This was from Kazakhstan, and it was carrying this sophisticated communication satellite, the Express AM4R, which was designed actually to provide internet to remote Russian territories. So this launch starts normally, but about 9 minutes into it, and right before the 3rd stage, where it actually releases the satellite, this unidentified orb-shaped object comes flying right up and crosses path with the rockets. And this is observed live by everyone who is viewing the launch. And at that exact moment, the Proton M rocket explodes. And this is, again, footage that's clearly available to anyone who wants to watch it. And no explanation is forthcoming from, the Roscosmos, which is the Russian space agency. All they said was the exact causes are hard to establish, and we will be studying this. But it's kind of a typical reaction, which is we're not going to comment on it. So this is going on all the time. Absolutely, there's current stuff all the time.
So, going back to the moon, what have you researched in as far as other artifacts that stand out to you? And I mean, we've talked about the glass structures with Richard Hoagland, and some of like the robot head that we've seen. We've talked about the astronauts landing and actually. I guess one astronaut mentioned, I think, was it Edgar Mitchell, saying that they were watching us on the moon while we were there. What would be some of the other objects or things that you have researched or seen or can add to this, I guess, the rest of the story here?
Yeah, well, I mean, the NASA photographs, hands down, I think are our best evidence. And somehow I think NASA didn't quite realize what they were doing when they released a lot of these. So if you look at some of the photos from, say, Fred Stecklin's book, they've got some very impressive stuff. There's one photo that shows an extremely clear photograph of a white, glowing, cigar-shaped object as it's hovering over the lunar surface. There's another one that's taken slightly before that one, which shows another, or maybe the same, glowing cigar-shaped object, but this is much higher above the surface. There's a photo taken by Apollo 11. It shows 2 glowing objects that are on the lunar surface or right next to it, and one is sitting right along the edge of a crater. There's a photo that's called the ziggurat, which shows what appears to be some sort of pyramid.
I've seen that one.
It's really impressive. I think one of my favorite photos from Fred Steckling's book showed what looks like water towers that are lining the edge of a crater. And there are some really impressive photos out there. It's by far the best evidence we got, and I think the photos that we're seeing, that's in the public arena, is only the tip of the iceberg. We know that NASA is sitting on a bunch of this stuff, so they're on my naughty list, and they've, recently they made this statement, and this just made me laugh really hard because they said, we think in like 20 years we'll have proof of extraterrestrials. And if you read between the lines, what they're saying is, in 20 years, we might release proof of extraterrestrials, because they have it. I think everyone, if you look into this as an objective person and examine the evidence that's in the public arena, it's very convincing. We do have pretty darn conclusive evidence that the moon is filled with all kinds of alien artifacts. That's, I think, why we went there, and most of it is still being kept secret, and I'm really mad about it. I think that's one of the reasons I'm on this show today, because darn it, this is not how I wanted my tax dollars to be paid before. Mm-hmm. I want to know what's out there. It's really interesting, and I want to know.
Right. Well, Preston, we're at the top of the hour, so let's go ahead and take our top of the hour break. And when we return, we will be talking with Preston Dennett more and talking more moon talk and possibly take your calls. So, Surlana, let me ask you, Preston, are you up to some phone calls if we can manage those?
Sure, absolutely.
Awesome, because our audience love to call in. So, yeah, let's do that. Surlana will get the phone lines open. That phone number is 844-734-7286. That's 844-734-SBUN. Always remember that it is a toll-free number. There's no nickel being charged to you. We pick up the dime on our end, and so that you can be free to talk with what you want to tell or ask our guests. So let's take this break, and we'll be right back after this.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network.
Explore the universe with Spaceboy and Surlana.
No, Surlana? Yes, Surlana?
What?
Just checking to see if you're awake over there.
Yeah, I'm just looking at chat.
Okay, good. So we're back, and tonight's guest is Preston Dennett. And, of course, the subject matter is the moon. But, the moon is such kind of just a tip of an iceberg of a bigger thing underneath the water kind of thing. And wouldn't you agree with that one, Preston?
Oh, yeah. I think the farther we explore out and the longer we stay in space, more unusual stuff that happens. I mean, if you look at the history of Skylab, there's several incidents supposedly where they saw UFOs. The space shuttle, for sure. There was a very famous incident which was studied by several people, which showed all kinds of activity and what appeared to be some of these objects shooting at each other. Not sure if you remember that, but it was televised all over the place. And NASA said, "Oh, what we're looking at is waste matter." They said it was frozen balls of urine.
Okay.
And my thought was, well, wait a second. So some people are saying these are spaceships, and you're saying something that is just so far removed from that there would be any question between the two. Just kind of like, really?
I still wouldn't want this frozen urine shot at my craft.
Exactly. I think that's a lot of horse malarkey, to be honest with you. But, hey, we have a caller on the phone?
Yes, we do. Are you there, caller?
Caller? Oh, let's try
Yes.
Bev?
Hello?
Can you hear us, Bev?
Yes, I can.
Can you hear us, Major Tom?
Are you
Can
calling
you hear
from
us?
another dimension?
No, I'm calling from my home.
Okay.
Well, that could be another dimension.
You have a question about the moon or anything for Preston?
Preston, yes.
Yes, I do. Okay, Preston. Why do you think that the moon has such an effect on us when it's a new moon or a full moon?
This is a great question, Beth, because the moon has a huge effect on everybody in a lot of different ways. I mean, it affects us physically. It affects the tides. There's all kinds of myths. Our language is just filled with it, whether it's, over the moon or moonstruck and so on. I think there is something to it. I think the fact that it's been around for a long time, we've adapted to it. I think it does stabilize to some extent the whole rotation of the Earth, I guess you would call it. I don't know, it's really hard to explain, but there is definitely a weird connection that people are fascinated by the moon. If you go back to ancient mythology, it's definitely present in there, in a lot of myths.
Well, there's a theory saying the moon is an electromagnetic computer that can be programmed, and it can transmit signals to maintain our DNA, and has been doing so for eons, and it has an effect on our blood.
Oh, wow.
I think ultimately it's just something that we're fascinated with. It's right there. It's so hard to reach. It's 250,000 miles away, which actually isn't that far, but it's so prominent in the sky that it's really had a whole mythology built around it in all different cultures. What's amazing is we actually made it there and found something that in some ways is just even more bizarre than all these mythologies.
Well, and I was watching on a PBS channel one time. I was watching on Nova about the moon, and they were talking to several ERs, emergency room hospitals, and they said that they always know when there's either a new moon or a full moon because they are exceptionally busy, and people are like stranger than normal.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I've heard studies about that, about crime rates and stuff during.
Yeah.
And we don't know exactly what's going on there.
Or where
there's no indication that there's any radiation or something being. And the moon, it has an albedo of 70%, which means it's very bright. It reflects almost all the light that's hits it, which is pretty unusual for an astronomical body. But as far as I know, there's no beams coming from it that make people's behavior alters it in some way. But there's something to it about how it affects us physically, and that might have something to do with it.
Makes you wonder, well, where did we get those stories about werewolves? Because the moon changes, it helps you shapeshift into that.
I mean, it affects crops. Farmers do, that's one of the ways that farmers would use to time when to plant their crops, things like this. It affects our calendar. It's affecting every aspect of society. So there's,
I can always tell, and this sounds weird, but I can always, tell when there's a full moon by our cat and dog. They act weird.
For a second there, I thought you were going to say Bob turns all hairy and turns into a werewolf.
Well, yeah, that.
No, but animals can sense upcoming earthquakes and things like that, so maybe there is something to it. Maybe the Earth reacts differently. I mean, if it's affecting our oceans, if it's affecting our bodies, it's clearly there's something to it. I mean, the statistics don't lie.
Right. And I seem to have more and more energy when there's either new moon or full moon.
Interesting.
Hello?
Were you still there, Bev?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here. But yeah, I seem to have more energy when there's either a new moon or a full moon.
Okay, now this is a family show. You can't be going down...
Hey, you're the one that thought of it, not me.
Bev, don't go there, Bev.
Oh, okay. But I mean, it's really it's strange the way it affects people and animals, and it's wild. But I just I just wanted to know if he thought why it would do that.
There's still a lot about the moon we don't know. And there has been only very limited research into that, as far as I know. I mean, I know that people have looked into it. Why do people sync up during the moon's cycle? How does it affect the tides? How is it affecting all these different cultures? Why are crimes rising? Why do people go nuts when there's a full moon? That's the big question. There's been a number of studies on that, and no one's been able to figure it out. So I don't know. I haven't done a whole lot of research into that, but I've certainly heard of it.
You were talking about. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I focus most of my effort on looking into the artifacts and trying to verify what this gentleman who I interviewed told me. But yeah, I totally agree with you. It is very strange.
Well, Bev...
And you were... Oh.
Sorry, you keep breaking up there. I was just going to say that...
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that, it is a big universe out there, and there are many mysteries that are yet to be discovered. And as we tell everybody, keep exploring the universe with us.
Oh, yeah. I like exploring the universe with y'all.
Well, we love you, Bev, and we appreciate you calling home base.
Well, I love you too, guys.
We'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Beverly.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right.
Another one.
Oh, we've got another caller. Caller, who's this?
Oh, someone beeped my ear. This is Dino.
Dino.
Hello, Dino.
Hi, and hello, Preston. I'm very excited to get to ask you some questions and speak with you tonight. I don't want to talk about the full moon. I'll just mention that Catalina had mentioned, one of our listeners, something that I did as an undergraduate, because I had a mother who taught me a lot about astrology and of course the effects of the full moon. And when I was an undergraduate, I decided to do a paper, and all I could come up with in my limited thing was the pineal gland, and that it is, even through your skull, it seems to get stimulation of light. Now, whether in modern times we have live in a big city, you have light all the time. I grew up in a big city. But so anyhow, we don't know, but it is, that's right, Preston, it is statistically, policemen, firemen, hospitals, emergency rooms will tell you anecdotally. Anecdotally that it seems to happen. A lot of things seem to happen, and people seem to bleed more, I was told once during full moons.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and what's weird is no one quite knows why. I mean, why would that be? There's not even really a whole lot of theories as to what's going on there. So,
well, I tried my theory, and that was that the pineal gland, that the stimulation of light made your hormones kind of jump. That was my undergraduate paper anyway. I had no proof. But if I could shift gears, if that's okay with everybody, what has intrigued me about the moon itself, I've always believed, I've looked at it through telescopes and through the naked eye. I was looking at it last night. And the thing that hits me is everything that you've brought up, Preston. I respect your research through the years. And in listening to you on other shows and listening to other shows about the moon, even though I was trained empirically a lot with my schooling, it really does seem to me that there are some strange things about the moon, and the thing about the fact that things have hit it at high velocity and they hear the ringing, and the fact that other things you've mentioned tonight about astronauts. I was able to ask Edgar Mitchell, for example, about a year before he died, via Skype at a contact in the desert, questions about whether he would keep oaths and whether he'd been sworn to oaths. And I was trying to get him, without breaking an oath, to tell me, and all he could say was, yes, I've taken things and secrets that I'm not supposed to reveal. And I think that was his backward way of saying, yes, a lot of stuff that goes on at these conferences is true. So with that in mind, Preston, what do you know? What I have researched that they said that, I don't know how you can calculate gravity. I'm not a physicist, but for the size of the mass of the moon and for how far it is from Earth, I've read stories and heard people saying that the astronauts should have been able to jump much higher than they did when they were hopping around, and that perhaps there should have been the places they land deeper dust if it had been there as long as it was, that they would sink down. And what's up with that? Have you read anything or learned anything about how much gravity should be on the moon, and indeed whether, you talked about clouds, whether there would be enough to hold any kind of an atmosphere?
Right. Yeah. These are good questions. And they're very hard to answer because I've heard definitely these stories, absolutely. And I think perhaps some of the reason this question keeps coming up is because some of the footage looks suspect. And there has been a lot of controversy about what exactly is the gravity of the moon. I believe officially it's 1/6 of Earth. And that's not enough officially to hold an atmosphere. But part of the problem is the atmosphere seems to be continually being produced from the rocks, and that there is sort of a lot of caves and hollow aspects to the moon. And this might be where the atmosphere is coming from. But definitely, there's a controversy there, and I think this is evidenced by how hard it was for us and the Russians to get to the moon, just to get there, to orbit around it, to crash land into it, to make a soft landing. This took an enormous amount of trial and error. So we didn't even know from what the gravity of the moon was back then, is my point. And I still have a lot of questions because I definitely know one thing for sure. We're not being told the entire truth. Too many people have caught NASA lying. Too many people have caught them altering photographs. Why are they altering photographs? I mean, what would be the motive behind that? To hide something. So we know something is going on. I don't know how extensive it is, but this guy that I interviewed, he said, there was air on the moon. So that speaks to what is the gravity of the moon.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. The thing that I wonder too, that with all the talk the last few years about Stanley Kubrick faked a landing, and that there have been some recording, I could see. I think that we did go, at least America went, but I can see how they may have wanted to interlace to cover up maybe real footage, or obviously in case we didn't get there, because I was alive then, and I know that there was a big concern about Russia getting there first and winning the Cold War with, psychology, and that if maybe something happened and we didn't get there, they could still say we were. But I could see them doing both, that we did indeed land a few of the Apollos there, but at the same time, if what Edgar said and what Gordon Cooper said, and there's another guy, O'Leary, they don't talk about him. He died of cancer kind of very young, but he became a PhD after he was an astronaut too, and he was into a lot of esoteric things. And all these guys, I could see where maybe they were told to shut up or to not talk about it. And so maybe the footage that either Kubrick or somebody else filmed would have been like to fill in. And that being said, I got to go to, a few years ago, they had the exhibits, supposedly, of the still photographs of several of the Apollo missions at a museum of art that I went to. And I happened to go on a night when hardly anybody was there, and I could take my time. And they were beautiful, clear, but they were black and white, snapshots of the moon and the astronauts on the moon. And I really stared at them. They were blown up nice and big, and I looked at them. And to me, I mean, I'm not an expert, but they looked real. But then, again, we wonder, why was it black and white? Even back in the late 60s, they had wonderful color cameras.
Exactly.
So that's the thing that makes me wonder about, yes, we did go, but certain aspects of it, as you're speaking tonight, were covered up for whatever reason. And I like your take on NASA that, Stanton Friedman calls it never a straight answer, because the fact that they want to cover things up, they're supposed to be a civilian space agency, but it's very obvious that the military runs things in space. Whether it's the Black Knight satellite, which I don't know if it exists, but I keep hearing people talk about it and say that it was spotted on the NASA. If that is some piece of technology, you wonder where it is. Again, cover-ups, and the back side of the moon, which is not dark. I want to know what those astronauts who stayed in the not the landing module, but stayed in the craft, what they saw and photographed. And why don't we see more of those photographs out?
Exactly. We paid for this whole moon mission, which cost an enormous amount of money. And we didn't get to see what they found. And that's what it comes down to. They found so much, they're like, we just can't reveal this. But it is coming out, and they have shown it to people. There's a number of people who've come out and said that they've seen these films, which show alien bases on the moon. And I think the footage is going to eventually come out, and we will see it. It's just a question of when. NASA's kind of painted themselves into a corner. It's hard for them to say, "Oh yeah, guess what? Guess what we found and we didn't tell you." So they're going to have a hard time with it.
Because, Preston, I admire what you've done. I wish that I would have gotten into the research on this earlier. Yeah. But, I love hearing you on the air. You're laid back, but you've obviously done a lot of things. And have you ever been harassed, followed, monitored that you know of? Because you're telling me that these things will be released. I imagine that you come into contact with people, maybe they'll start releasing to you. But have you ever been harassed, surveilled, anything like that during the time? You've been doing this about 25 years, right?
Yeah, I have had some weird stuff going, not in a really serious way, but I've certainly had a lot of problems with my mail, back when people used to actually use snails to deliver their mail, back in snail mail days. But when email came along, sure enough, I've had email problems. I've had phone problems. which got really bad actually at some point, where I would hear clickings and static when I did interviews with people. And it was when I was doing research into the Topanga Canyon UFO wave, I did receive a threatening-ish phone call from a gentleman who claimed to be in the Army, have top secret clearance, said he was a satellite mapper in Vietnam, and was going on and on about his resume, and asked me if I was the Preston Dennett who was doing UFO research. I said yes, of course, and this was, I was a pretty young researcher at the time. This was back in the mid-1990s. And he started to say, well, you better be careful what you're doing. This could get you in trouble. UFO research is dangerous. And I'm like, oh yeah? And he's like, oh yeah, you could get killed doing stuff like this. And which is basically a threat. And then he said, well, and there's no pay dirt in it. There's no reason to look into this because it's not what you think it is. You're not going to find any answers here. And I'm like, okay. Well, I was more flattered really than kind of put off by it, because I thought, hey, maybe I've hit a nerve here, or maybe someone's actually paying attention to my research. But all in all, no, I've never really been like surveilled in a way that I can point to. But it's my understanding, according to some of the documents that have come out through the Freedom of Information Act and from research by other researchers, that UFO researchers are closely monitored. And the CIA has dossiers on a lot of them. I don't know if I'm important enough for them to pay any attention to, but I would imagine probably yes, and that they're keeping a very close watch on this entire subject.
I guess that means we're...
Well, do you know anybody that I wish more UFO researchers would support each other. It seems like so many of them are trying to sell a book or on, and like you said, most people, except for a couple of namely ones, don't make much of a living at it. And so it's a research of love for you. But being that I think you're the real deal, and I think people hear you on these programs. It doesn't matter how big you are, but is there anybody that's going to start sharing maybe with you instead of going with the big names, that are out there in the field? Maybe you're becoming a big name. Why have you approached any of these people and say, look, I'd be willing to release some of this stuff if you want to remain anonymous?
Right. Well, as far as the moon, no, I haven't, because I kind of kept my research into that pretty quiet. This is one of the first major interviews I've done on this, actually. I have done others, but definitely I have been contacted by a lot of people who you would call whistleblowers. I've been doing a lot of research into USOs, underwater submersible objects, unidentified submersible objects, and I've talked to a guy who was a submarine navigator. I've talked to a Coast Guard captain. I've talked to police officers. I've talked to a bunch of people who are wanting to tell their stories. One guy told me his story on his deathbed. As far as I know, he's still doing okay. But he wanted to get his story out about an encounter at Edwards Air Force Base in which he saw what looked like secret kind of Star Wars technology. Basically, it was a reverse-engineered UFO that was levitating in this kind of hangar there. He saw that, and he told me his story. So yeah, I can say that yes, people are contacting me, and there's a lot of them. Another guy told me about how he was a security guard watching nuclear missiles, and basically this is very much like the Malmstrom incident, and he described it in detail, in which this UFO hovered over nuclear base. So a lot of these people are trying to get their stories out, but getting UFO information out is difficult. There's still a cover-up, and selling a book to a major publisher, it's not always easy. And
well, I think they should release to you. And by the way, you mentioned USOs. Do you know anything else about the last couple of years about this Malibu underwater structure? Have you heard anything that hasn't been released yet on it? A lot of us are wondering.
Oh yeah, I'm the guy. This is going to be one of my books for sure. I've been researching it since 2006 when I wrote a chapter for my book, UFOs Over California, about activity off the coast here. And to publicize the book, I wrote an article for Fate magazine. And I was the first guy to say, is there a base out here off the coast of Southern California? Because there is so much activity. And that Fate magazine article went viral and brought me a bunch of other cases. And ever since then, I've been collecting cases. And it was around 2013 I started getting emails from, one guy, Robert Stanley, he's a major researcher. He's the first guy who saw these satellite images of this structure off the coast of Malibu, right where I just knew it would be. I started getting emails from other people, and then more recently, I believe it was 2013 or 15, Jimmy Church got some Google images enhanced, which showed this thing that makes it look absolutely clearly artificial. It's very hard to say. I'm not a math expert, but I've been getting a lot of information about it since, and boy, I could talk about that for hours.
Yeah, I mean, but again, we hear information, but nothing's been released, and it's been almost 2 years. And I know that Point Doom and off around Catalina, there's been stuff. I know individuals I've met at different points in my life who are in the Navy, and the Navy seems to be the lead military thing for space travel because, ships in space. And both 2 or 3 of these people, actually about 3 or 4, through the years were on various ships or on various duties out in the open ocean. And things happen. They saw something go under their boat. One guy told me during the late 60s, he said the captain came on, they saw this pulsating object go under their ship. Captain came on the PA and said, gentlemen, this is a matter of national security, and no one will ever talk about anything that just transpired. And he only told me, 30 years later. Another guy, same thing. He told me about something was happening on their ship, and they were told, don't talk about it. So there are things going on under the oceans as well, yes, and I'm glad you're looking into it. I wish you could leak something and tell us, because everybody I talk to says, whatever happened to that Malibu thing? It's like it got dropped. But you're telling me, as we speak, there's been, has someone gone down there in a submersible?
UFOs are seen everywhere. They're seen in our oceans, they're seen in space, they're seen all over Earth. None of this really surprises me anymore. I'm long past the point of doubt. I think that these guys are... I think space is much more crowded with UFOs than people realize. According to the guy I talked to, there was a very large mother ship that's within our solar system, miles in length, that can't be seen because it's dark, but was detected through radar and other, means. And it's not ours. It's extraterrestrial. And it could hold millions of these guys. There's these huge motherships which hold all these craft. There's evidence of all these undersea bases. Certainly there's probably underground bases. I think it's a lot busier out there with ET activity than even people within the UFO field realize.
Wow, it's just amazing. Well, we wait the new information with bated breath, because many of us who listen to these programs are not mindless. We try to be critical thinkers. I talk to people every day that I have a little keychain with a little gray alien on it, and whenever I pull that out, you'd be surprised the types of people. I've had policemen, all type of people, young, old, that it will open them up and they will start telling me about things that have been very strange to them that they don't talk to most people about. So we all know something's going on, and we await your book or anybody else that is here. I just wish that, like Stephen Greer has talked about, putting everybody together in a big Woodstock-like festival, so all whistleblowers would be protected by numbers, and just everybody coming forth one weekend, and making it an event. I mean, the Citizens Hearing on Disclosure, I think, was great, but this has to be like an event that the drones and the helicopters and everybody got to cover, and I hope you'll be one of the folks that's up there telling everything you know when that happens.
Yeah, I hope so too. I know this information is going to come out sooner or later, and it's definitely coming out, so that is good news.
Well, thank you. Thank you for answering all my questions. Thank you, Space and Surlana. And I'll be listening, and I don't know what direction the conversation will go, but we're all listening. Thank you for being here, Preston. I like hearing you.
Thanks very much, Dino.
Thank you, Dino. And
Dino.
By the way, Dino, before you go, I haven't forgot about your music. I've been, postal service here has been a little slow in space.
Don't worry.
But I haven't forgot about you, and just expect it soon. I was waiting to, I try to accumulate some postage up before I mail everything out. So goodies will be going out pretty soon, and you're a part of that.
No
list.
rush. I got to do my taxes anyway. Okay.
All right,
Good
Dino.
night, you guys.
Take care.
Bye.
All right, so we've reached the bottom of the hour, so let's take our final break, and if there's a call, we'll take that, and then we'll take some final thoughts with Preston, and then, he can talk about some of his new goodies that he's just put out there. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. You're listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network, and tonight's special guest has been Preston Dennett, and we've talked about the moon, and we've encouraged him to come back at any time that he wants, and because it's always a good conversation when we have Preston on. Everyone's so relaxed, and it's just I wanted to make sure everybody knew that we love Preston Dennett here at the Spaceboy. I know I got a little tongue-tied. Surlana gave me the look. Preston Dennett is a great guest to have on.
It's all about buttering people up tonight.
I want to make sure that Preston knows that we do like him here.
And we're being buttered up in the chat too, as well.
So it's all. I
What's
mean,
going on?
We're all patting each other on the back. Hey, great job, great
Is
job.
it a full moon?
Well, you got the
eclipse happened last night.
Yeah. So, But anyway, back to Preston. So, Preston, do you want to add anything else onto the subject matter here? And
anything we didn't cover yet?
Yeah, like some final thoughts and some, I mean, we'll talk about your media here in just a minute, but, about the subject matter.
Well, I don't think we've heard the last about the moon. I think there's still a lot of stuff that NASA's sitting on that eventually they're going to release, and they've hinted at that, like we talked about. And the moon's so close. I think we've got to go back, because how easy it would be to make a moon base is ridiculous. The technology that we had back then to get to the moon, I mean, it was very difficult. But I've heard, analogies that a cell phone now has enough computer power to basically navigate to the moon.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the excuse that we're not there doing it? And why is it being downplayed? And that, I think, is where we're going to start seeing some changes. I think we're going to start seeing that we are actually doing space exploration and possibly even going to other planets and things like this. There's a whole secret lunar or a space navy, so to speak, that we're not being told about. And I think that's coming out now. And so I think that's where there's going to be some very exciting developments, and I'm excited to see what happens.
Well, what is the point of the space station? I mean, it seems like we'd be better served going to the moon and trying to figure out how to maybe, terraform, or
maybe it's a front.
Yeah, the space station, by the way, it also has a bunch of UFO sightings associated with it, which are pretty regular, actually. Turn up all the time. There's been some controversy about their camera, which sometimes displays, continuously, just sort of the webcam there, which has also displayed some unusual images which appear, and they shut off their camera once when one of these things appeared. There was a whole controversy about that.
One of our chatters mentioned that earlier. James Cruz says that, if something gets juicy on there, and then all of a sudden it goes dead for no apparent reason.
Right. So I think it's, again, public knowledge to most of the astronauts that there's all kinds of stuff going on. That's what I heard, when the space shuttle often has encounters, or did. And why did they retire the whole space station, the Challenger, the shuttle program?
It seemed like they couldn't get that done fast enough, too.
Right.
To
I mean,
shut it
our
down.
only means to getting into space, if you take out the Russians, for example, to getting into space was the shuttle, and then they shut that down like a hot potato. And then you've got this mystery shuttle-looking thing that the military's been putting up there for long, extended stays up in space, which is unmanned. It goes up there and who knows what it's doing. And so, it's kind of weird that we don't have a way to get there. Now, NASA claims that their next big project is the Orion project. But, I thought the space shuttle was a pretty decent idea. Why couldn't they have made Shuttle 2.0, kind of, revamp it and made new ones, kind of thing?
Yeah, well, we have the alien technology, and that's what they're using. And it's kind of foolish to use fossil fuels other than just for a whitewash or publicity stunt. And I think they're just carrying on in secret, doing technology that's way in advance of what we officially see.
Well, it was like they were experimenting with EM drives, and they've kind of kept it on the low down, and so that they can confirm it all. And this is looking positive, but it kind of goes back to let's just say it works. Well, haven't we been kind of brainwashed into believing that it works anyway because of Star Trek?
Right, yeah. UFOs are so pervasive in the media, too. Advertising. I remember I was down in San Diego visiting a friend, and the neighbor kid comes running in and says, "I'm going to go to Area 51 and shoot aliens." And he runs off. And I looked at my friend, I'm like, what did he just say? Well, it turns out there's an arcade called Area 51. That was some years ago. But shows how pervasive the whole UFO subject is in our society.
Yeah, I mean, just everywhere you look, I mean, just themes of aliens, it's just embedded into our culture, and I was thinking earlier about a couple things. Now that I'm circling back here, I'm wondering if the reason why was it not Buzz, but Neil Armstrong that didn't have all the artifacts that you would think that some
like where all his accolades and
What if it was maybe a man who was proud of the situation where he didn't feel honorable about the fact of having the claim to go into the moon. He was an honorable gentleman, but yet he had to keep the secret that maybe wasn't very honorable. Maybe that was why his house, or he didn't keep artifacts saying that,
first man on the moon.
Could you imagine getting all that attention? We've seen stories like that before where somebody gets all this attention and it's not warranted because they're just trying to cover up a situation. So I was thinking about that. And then the other thing I started thinking about, it's amazing how these things all kick in at the last minute, was, if I was an alien race and I wanted to observe the Earth, the backside of the moon would be pretty good for me in the sense that, I could have a place, put a base there. The humans couldn't, or let me say it like this, humans couldn't actually get at me because, they're pre-warp kind of thing. They can't, other than the little propelled rockets that get to them.
They can't get you quickly.
Yeah, can't get you quickly. By the time they get to you, you could take them off. And then plus, if I was going to do an invasion of the Earth, I would imagine having some kind of big craft out towards Jupiter, but having the moon as a kind of like, all right, here's the last minute. At the last minute, we leave from the backside of the moon, and then boom, we invade Earth. I know this is a little out there science fiction-wise, but I can imagine that there would be a lot of aliens that would put up a base or something to that effect behind the spot of the moon that we never get to see from Earth.
Right. Our alien overlords are hiding there on the backside of the moon, and we are their experiment here down on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not sure that that's exactly true, but I think that there are aliens on the moon, and I think that to deny that is to deny the evidence that's right out there in front of our face.
And then there's the third thing I've thought about, too, out of all this moon research that we kind of went over. I know we were talking about the moon being a ship of some kind, and, I probably don't favor that. It's an interesting topic of it being like an arc situation. But then I thought about, sure, there's quite a few different elements on the moon that make it to where, what if there was a situation where Earth was a civilization and they had things on the moon, and then through some major universal catastrophe, something happens, and you have the decline in the universe. Let me get this straight. The civilization on Earth goes from different things of technology to back to the Stone Age. And then you have, something where time passes. You have hundreds of thousands, maybe even a couple million years. I guess in that time, a lot of things get to reset, and then what we're looking at is technology from who knows how many civilizations before.
Right. Yeah, I think there's lots of evidence of ancient technologies. And the fact that a pyramid on the moon that looks just like some of the pyramids here on Earth, and for that matter on Mars, and we haven't even talked about the Phobos monolith.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if you really want to, it just goes on and on. I think there's probably evidence of, who knows how old these civilizations are on the moon. But I think that there's some of them stretch back millions of years is how it looked to some of these things, because they were just ancient and completely destroyed, where other was much newer. And it must be strange for, these alien races, some of which, are, by the way, are human-looking, like us, and could easily infiltrate our society, and probably do. To watch our own civilization rise and fall, which it apparently has done. If you look at the ancient Vinyanas from India and the whole Atlantis myth, that's just the beginning of it. Mm-hmm. Apparently we've had numerous advanced civilizations. And we're right at that same point again, where we're going to destroy ourselves, which is the number one message coming from ETs about don't destroy the environment and nuclear power and so on.
What do they got invested in it then? They don't want us to destroy it. I mean, what's it to them?
I mean, you would think that, hey, let them destroy each other in free land. We can come in and plant our flag kind of thing.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions. I mean, if they're that advanced, and if they keep saying, well, we're warning you of this, well, maybe you could intervene, help a little bit with Fukushima, which apparently is getting really bad, and all these other problems we have, which apparently could be easily fixed. But I think they know better than that. I wrote a book years ago called UFO Healings, and they have the technology to heal all kinds of diseases. But can you imagine what we would do with that technology? I would imagine that we would use it for war and military purposes. Sending soldiers out and they get injured, we'd heal them back up and send them right out again. Mm-hmm. And we'd then have problems with overpopulation. And who gets this technology and who doesn't? So I'm not sure we're even ready for some of this ET technology that we already have our hands on.
Well, I imagine also right on that same subject line, alien races. We've talked about with other guests about like the alien race, the Draconians, the Dracos, or the lizard-like aliens that they really don't want us out there because they see us as a warrior-like race, and the last thing they want us off this planet. And trying to smudge our thumb in their face, and so one can only imagine. And you kind of have to ask: will there ever be a time where humanity as a whole will reach an enlightenment? I mean, how many cycles does civilization have to rise and fall before humans actually get to that point where okay, enough's enough, and we've learned what we need to learn?
Well, it's not anytime soon.
Well, I think we're trending towards it. Part of the problem is the military, I think, parts of it at least, still look upon the aliens as a threat. They see them hovering over our nuclear power stations and shutting down our missiles, hovering over dams and hovering over strategic locations and doing all these things that we can't stop. But if you look at their behavior, it falls under the normal human umbrella, UFOs. And it's much easier to prove that we're a hostile species than it is to prove that ETs are. And judging from what they're telling people, it seems like they're trying to improve our society as best as they can without directly intervening. And there's 3 topics they generally talk to people about when they're taken on board a UFO. And I still think the whole abduction phenomena is real and sort of the central focus of this whole UFO phenomena. But they talk about, again, warnings of disaster, but beyond that, alternative energy sources and alternative healing or psychic development, this sort of thing, which all point towards human enlightenment. I think that's their whole agenda, is to try and stop us. That's their main agenda, at least. It's definitely one of them. To try and help us becoming more enlightened. I don't think that they're evil here to take over the planet. I think they could have done that easily if they wanted to. I think probably there's more evidence speaking towards them genetically manipulating us throughout the years, throughout the centuries and millennia, and being more sort of their experiment. But I don't think that they're necessarily hostile. And of all the people I've talked to who had really close encounters, almost nobody will say that they're evil. And the worst I get is that they're unemotional, and people feel like they're being treated like lab rats, or just that sort of thing. But very few cases of sadism or anything like that.
Yeah, I get the impression that if they wanted to destroy this, they could have taken over the Earth by now and done their bidding. But I think, like you, in the sense that I think it's more of the observation. They're learning, they're sampling, they're I think that's more of their intent, to kind of just be the one who pulls the strings, if you will, and be the puppet masters and kind of experiment in that sense. Because I don't think, if it was something invasion on their mind or destroy us, we could have been gone already, based on all the alien races we've heard about and
I don't
seen.
know what to think, because I keep hearing different reports of like, oh, I got abducted and it was a good experience, and then the other one's like, no, it was horrific, and then they're saying, well, you've got a false memory of your good experience and it was actually bad, and
Right. Screen memory.
don't know what to think, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. I've talked to people who've had identical experiences, and they've interpreted it very differently. Everything from saying, oh, I think it was demonic. I've heard that. Which I don't think that there's a very strong argument for that. But angelic, I've had people have, abduction experiences that they tell me about, and some are just terrified out of their minds and thought it was a horrible experience. But another person says, it really wasn't that bad. I wasn't even really that scared. I found it very interesting. And I've talked to people who had very positive experiences. I think with the Greys, generally speaking, you run a larger chance of not having so much fun. Because these guys can come take you out of your bedroom at night or off the highway while you're driving, and it can be very scary. But I've talked to a number of people who had encounters with what you would call Nordics, kind of like Travis Walton described. Very handsome-looking human figures, and their experiences were very friendly. I've talked to people who had experiences with praying mantis type, and those can range from very friendly to, kind of scary. So you get all types, and I've kind of learned to sort of judge each case on its own merits. And when I talk to someone, I can, to a certain extent, predict what they're going to say. But I'm also always surprised at certain details. But yeah, each case you have to kind of let the witnesses speak for themselves. Some people have had, unpleasant experiences for sure. But like I said, no cases of people being tortured so the aliens have fun. It's not something they get off on.
Usually the reports are it's clinical. It's nothing like a frat boys in space kind of situation where, it's a kegger and these aliens are coming down to, hazes the alien or Earth's humans, I guess.
Don't give away good sitcom ideas like that.
No, nothing like that. Yeah, I think that they're very interested in our bodies. That's pretty demonstrable. And that's definitely one of the most common things that happen to people when they're taken on board, would be a physical examination. But that's particularly with the Greys. Who I think, by the way, have a very close relationship with us in some way. Certainly there's a smattering of cases out there in which they say directly, we are you and you are us, and we are related. And then there's the whole hybridization and genetic intermingling phenomena, which I've got enough cases to know that is definitely going on. So I think that there is some indication that they are, us from the future. This is something that's definitely been speculated.
I've heard that too.
But, I hate to speculate in this field, and this is why I really just try and get the eyewitnesses' stories out so people can judge for themselves what's going on.
Well, Preston, we are reaching the bottom of the tire show, and this is the point where I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to tell the audience of all the things you've put out there, the goodies, and where they can get them, and so let her rip.
All right. Well, first of all, I want to thanks for having me on the show. It's great to be part of the universe and talking to you guys. So I really want to thank you for that. And I've got a lot of stuff going on. I recently released 2 books, Not From Here 1 and 2, and also UFOs over Arizona. But I'm most excited about a book that's just out, literally just a couple of weeks ago, and that's called Inside UFOs, True Accounts of Contact. And recently hit #1 on Amazon. I'm thrilled, and been working hard to publicize that. And thanks so much for having me on the show.
Well, Preston, yes, you are part of the universe, and we appreciate you coming on tonight. And as always, we, Surlana and I, want to make sure that if you have any information or anything, even if it's coming on for a brief segment and you want to present it to our audience, you're more than welcome. Our door is always open for you, sir.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's always a pleasure.
Okay. Hold on there, and as we close out the show here, Surlana and I are going to do some housekeeping, so just hold tight right there. So, Surlana, what a show. And this is the part where I'm going to say, what do we got lined up on the board there?
Well, I need to confirm. Ken, I forgot his last name. Was it
Ken, the crypto guy?
Ken, the crypto guy.
The one with the cool-looking owl?
Yeah, the cool-looking owl. And then on the 25th of this month,
yes,
we're going to talk about some of our favorite news stories from Linda Moulton Howe. Not talking to her, but about her.
This is our rescheduled show that we decided to reschedule for the 25th. And then, of course, I guess at the end of that month, we're going to shift gears and go into some of our classic stuff that we do, like history and tech. And I mean, because Spaceboy music is more than just fringe, but we got music, we got pop culture, technology, gaming. And
got some cool stuff coming up.
Yeah, so we got some cool things coming on up. And, we'll see how that goes. So what else? What do you got there?
We'll probably be talking to the kids of the First in Texas competition. We'll keep going on with them as they finish their build season.
Most definitely.
So stay tuned for that.
Tomorrow we have a field trip. We're going out to Webster, Texas.
Where we met.
We personally met, but we're going to go see Daryl Sims. He's giving a speech out there, and we're going to go check out his speech and
got my fingers crossed. I might get some catfish
and maybe get a picture with him. At least I will.
Or he will.
Surlana hates pictures, which she probably would have made a great NASA employee.
Yeah.
So
I got rid of all of them.
So, but other than that, great shows coming up. Once again, housekeeping. Friday nights, Spaceboy Music has been moved to Friday nights at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. It is a live show where I pull music out of my vault and play it up for you so I can play it loud. Saturday nights haven't changed. We own Saturday nights. That's right. Spaceboy Universe Live is on and in effect at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. And now I'm pleased to pronounce that on Sundays you have the best of Spaceboy Universe. That's right. We reach back in our archives of shows and replay a classic episode, a best of. This show coming up tomorrow at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time will be a show with Solaris Blue Raven. So, check that out, and, you'll have a place to go in and chat, and, we might show up occasionally in there. It depends if we're tired or not, because, we have to do other things to keep the universe going. But other than that, that's about it. So, with that said, say goodnight, Surlana.
Good night, Surlana.
Spaceboy Universe is hosted by Spaceboy and Surlana. Executive producer is Surlana. Social media producer is Dennis Koch. Associate producer is Lee Ann Cordes. Music production is Spaceboy of SpaceboyMusic.com. Special thanks goes out to Lee Ann K, K28, Mark S, and Bob N. This has been a Spaceboy Universe production. Support the universe by exploring Spaceboy Universe with Spaceboy and Surlana. Sweet dreams, Space Cadets.